Okay, hi, I think I did it. I'm a bit confused. I hope I have everything. I'm not sure if I forgot anything. Hey. Hi. I was incredibly stressed this past week. Because I just had, until yesterday, like 7 work days out of 8 days. But only because it's impossible to work on Sunday when everything is closed. So, because I'm pretty sure I would have had to work on Sunday too if that was in any way possible. Oh, it was awful. But at least I have now 4 days off, which... The reason why I'm late is because I was basically enjoying my day off. I really needed that. It was so horrible. I can't even remember what I did this past week. I did a few things, but everything feels like it's just blending together. I feel like I spent 90% of my time either sleeping or at work, and it was horrible. I'm so glad it's over. I'm free. Oh, I just realized I did forget one thing. Oh, can I? I'm gonna do that on the side, I think. I hope. Because we'll need that in a bit. I think. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see. If everything feels like a bit unstructured and not probably planned out, well, it's because it is. I just had this idea spontaneously a few days ago because YouTube started recommending a lot about Tolkien, which I do not mind. It's fascinating, it's interesting, I like it. And I've been watching a lot about him lately. I think it's because I've been watching a lot of Witcher 3 stuff. Because I also started... Did I mention that? I feel like I've talked about that already. Because I've started replaying Witcher 3. A game that I wanted to replay for like years at this point, but just never did. Partly because I think I got it... I don't even remember what that... Online video game distributor... Steam copy. I think it was there before Steam. Not sure. Was it there before Steam? Kinda hard to believe it was there before Steam. Either way, there was like this other thing that I had the game on that I don't think I've opened in like, well, the game came out 10 years ago. The DLC is probably a year or two later, so I probably haven't opened that in the last 8 years. Whenever I played Blood and Wine. When did Blood and Wine come out? Witcher 3, Blood and Wine release date. When did that come out? May 31st, 2016. Never mind. I probably haven't opened that in 10 years then. Wait, does it mean The Witcher 3 came out 12 years ago? Oh shit, the game is old. It's still better than some modern games, which is a crime, honestly. But anyway, I've been replaying that. I'm really happy doing that. I still love The Witcher 3, and as far as I know, supposed to get a new expansion, which has nothing to do with why I'm replaying it. It's a huge coincidence. Is that release date? Scheduled to release in 2027. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know anything about it. I've not watched anything about the new expansion. It's be completely blind for me, and I'm really looking forward to that. Oh, it was supposed to come out this year, but it was delayed for extra polish. Which I assume means they don't want to do another Cyberpunk. To be fair, Witcher 3 was also delayed for some extra polish. And then they cut content. Which I also learned lately. I've been watching a lot of Witcher 3 videos. And in general, Witcher lore videos. I learned a lot. And at the same time, I feel like I learned not much. I did learn that the author apparently is kinda inconsistent, and despite not really knowing anything about the Witcher games, so which I assume he wasn't really part of the story writing, he still did do things later on that were mentioned in the game that were not original in the books. So it is very inconsistent, which I kind of don't like. And it's also the opposite of Tolkien, which is very consistent. That would be such a perfect witch, but I'm not sure. I feel like I wanted to say more before I go into the main topic. It would have been such a perfect transition, though. Man, Either way, I've been enjoying Witcher 3 a lot. It's a very chill game, and I can, especially because I can do whatever I want, you know? If I'm really tired, or not tired, like really exhausted at the end of it. Why is my cup dirty outside? What the heck? Is that coming from? Okay. Sorry. Can't even drink tea without getting distracted. Shit, I listened. What are they talking about? Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I can just do whatever, right? Like, if I have an exhausting day and I just start up the game to play for an hour or two, I can just do some question marks on the map, or I can play some Gwent, which I still enjoy a bit too much. And it's just good to, you know, make decisions that feel like they actually matter. But also not matter too much in a way that, oh no, you made the wrong decision, well, here, bad ending, screw you. Which, I don't think any game does that, but you know what I mean. Like, the decisions feel meaningful enough for the moment, without having super long-lasting consequences, really. Other than a few of them. But it's also really nice. Also, they have a lot of history. It's a really beautiful world. It's really fun to just run around, see things. It's also super nice to just run around and all of a sudden, random side quest that you did not expect. The amount of times I ran into a random cutscene, I can't even count anymore. I feel like that happened like 4 or 5 times already, that I was just running around and all of a sudden, cutscene, something happens, I have no idea what's going on. Here, make a decision. And it's great. Also, it's fully voiced. Something that is oddly still not common. God, didn't know to go with that sentence. I'm just super surprised every time I play The Witcher 3, and then I think about this game is 12 years old. It's like, it's giving me the same or similar feeling than Dark Souls. Because you can go back to the older Dark Souls games and play them, and it's like, damn, these games are still better than some of the modern games that come out. And it's kind of sad. So many games, like, there's so many games coming out nowadays, and not even half of them have not nearly the same quality as some of those games. So that's really sad. I wish we had more of those games. I would not mind having like half the games per year, but like double of the amount of those kind of games, which we get very rarely. And I also do not mind waiting like 5 years for, you know, in between. Okay, 5 years is maybe too much. How long did we wait between Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring? I have to Google that. Because I don't remember when Dark Souls 3 released. That was 2016, and Elden Ring was 2022. Wait, that was 6 years. Well, not exactly, because the Dark Souls 3 DLCs. 2017. Okay, that was also only a year late. That was only a year later? What the frick? They really pumped them out. Holy shit. I thought it was like 1 DLC per year for Dark Souls 3, but no. They really pushed them out quickly. Why does it feel so long between those, though? Maybe because I played the main game, or the base game, like non-stop when it released. So it felt super long at the time. Damn. Okay, well. So I'm not wrong. I don't mind waiting like 5 years in between games if I get this quality of game. Which means, shouldn't there be a new game next year? Wait, it's been almost 5 years since Elden Ring? What? Oh, that's a completely new existential crisis that I have now. What? No, there's no way it's been 55 years since Elden Ring. What? What? I have to check, when was the DLC? Oh yeah, true. There's gonna be a tarnished edition coming in 2 weeks? Less than 2 weeks. No. More than 2 weeks, not 18, 28. I'm looking forward to that. I have no idea what this tarnished edition is about. I think it's just a... We're getting torrent customization? Oh shit, we're getting the horse armor DLC. I can feel it. Just that it's not gonna be a DLC because FromSoft, it's a good company. It's not giving us an overpriced DLC for no content. It's giving us a fair price DLC with way too much content. God. I feel like I'm straying away from what I wanted to talk about, but I'm pretty sure that there's a video that I wasn't planning on watching, but we can watch that. It connects everything that I'm talking about right now with the topic that I wanted to talk about. So I'm not even walking off the path. This is all connected. You just don't know it yet. But I still love the fact that they released a DLC and it was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be the size of Limgrave. And then we got the DLC and it was like, yeah, it's the size of Limgrave. On top of Limgrave. On top of Limgrave. They basically gave us a new area the size of the base game. And they just said, oh yeah, it's gonna be like the starting area. God, I love FromSoft. Which reminds me, maybe after I finish Witcher 3, I should finally play Armored Core 6, because I bought that when it was on sale, finally, and I've yet to start it. Maybe I should do that. Also reminds me of, I really... You know, I played a lot of Souls-like, right? And I have to say, a lot of Souls-like just don't do it for me. I just don't like them. I'm just bored. Because I started Stellar Blade, and I was really set on finishing that before starting Witcher 3. But I just didn't enjoy it. I was bored. And I mean it right off the start. Because the combat was okay. I feel like the combat in Stellar Blade is like the selling point for me. But the story... Actually, the story was also not bad. I feel like the conversations and the cutscenes are fun. Just the overworld, which is the main game, is just so boring and empty. The side quests don't feel interesting. And maybe I'm just saying that because I've been playing Witcher 3 and every freaking side quest feels like a main story. Which is insane. Like, Witcher 3 is just... They know how to do writing, man. Every single side quest in The Witcher 3 feels like you're playing like a mini main story. Because it is the main story for the side character, right? It is just, it feels so good and the voice acting is on point and everything. And then I compare it to Stellar Blade and I feel like I'm running through an area that's just super empty. Enemies just... And that's something that started bothering me the more of these games I play. Enemies just spawn behind you. They don't ambush you, like they're not, you know, like on top of a cliff and jump down and ambush you. No, they just straight up spawn behind you. And that started to really bother me in games. Because it's something that Dark Souls doesn't do. They rather, you know, place them really smart so that if you run past them, they drop out of a window or so. Like, they just make it smart. Or something like they did in Dark Souls 2, right? Where you go on the sword right off the start in the Forest of the Giants, I think the area was called. And when you're like halfway on it, on the way to this item that's on it, from the first floor, enemies drop on the sword and kind of ambush you. You know, Dark Souls 2 already did that right. And then I keep playing Souls-like that just don't get it, that just don't do it right. That just spawn enemies behind you, and I'm also gonna be honest, main story of Stellar Blade couldn't be more boring because they basically revealed the big reveal right off the start. And I honestly don't know who did the writing for that, but how boring do you want to make it? I have to be fair though, I've watched Stellar Blade, I've seen, well, not really seen the ending, I'm more like listening to it, but I've seen a speed run, so I already knew who the big bad guy is, right, and who's the final boss. That didn't really bother me, because, you know, a good story should still be good on the way to the end. Like, knowing the end usually shouldn't ruin a good story. But I feel like Stellar Blade is kind of like, hey, these enemies you're fighting, everything is suggesting that they're actually ... Don't want to say it, because I don't want to purposefully spoil it, but the game does a really bad job hiding that. It's really bad at making it a big reveal, because it's not just hinted at. I feel like the game is straight up giving you, like, notices from characters that you can find, like, on the ground. Like, there's a dead person you can pick up, I don't know, a USB stick. I'm a bit confused. The game does also a really bad job explaining the world to me, so I don't really understand what's going on. And you know, that there's, like, conversations like, oh, I found out that these things running around our town are actually this, and it's insanely obvious. Like, the in-game, every character already figured it out, everyone knows about it, but for some reason the protagonist doesn't, so you are also not supposed to know about it, but everything is hinting towards it so massively that you literally need to be a one-track minded android something that the protagonist, I think, is, to not get it. And it's just stupid. It just feels like a very shallow story that... I think the selling point is obvious, but the thing is, and that makes me sad, because I played Wuzhang, Fallen Feathers, which also obviously has a very appealing protagonist, but the story was good. Like, I was really intrigued, and by the end of it, getting the bad ending, I was like, no, frick it, I have to play this again and get the other endings. And then I 100%ed the game, because I really enjoyed it. The gameplay was good, the areas didn't even feel linear. There was not, like, huge choice of do you go left or right. It was pretty linear in that way. But it was more like, you know, a maze. You could go left and then come out at the end, but you could also go right and you could go a completely different path but leads to the same ending. And throughout the game you have small decisions to make that if you do the wrong ones, you'll have to play the game again to make the... Well, not the wrong one, but if you make one decision, you have to play the game again to make the other decisions, because you get different rewards, and you need both rewards for the achievements. So the replayability was also way better, and for Stellar Blade it just doesn't feel like that. But the sad thing is, I really want to go around and do all the side stuff and explore the world, but that made it even worse for Stellar Blade. Also, the map felt insanely dumb. I don't know what it is, but was it even Stellar Blade or was it a different game? There was a game I played lately where the map was so horrendous that I hated looking at it. Which is like the polar opposite of Witcher 3. Witcher 3, I open the map all the time because I feel like I get so much info by just doing that. And I never get lost. Also, the marker, really nice. God, I love the marker. Also, there's the fact that you can just press nothing and you automatically follow the path while riding Roach. Like, there's so much good about Witcher 3, and the game is like freaking 12 years old. And then I start a modern game that doesn't have half of that, and I'm just disappointed. Granted, I want to say those games probably have more money, but I am not even sure. Souls-like is a weird genre where no one really knows what Souls-like are. And at the same time, no one seems to really understand what makes them good. It's one of the reasons why I'm still playing Dark Souls, because they do it the best. But maybe because they're literally the ones who founded the genre. Oh, yeah, right, I was talking about the Tarnished Edition. I was checking. So what is their new starting classes? I've seen them. I like that. I think Elden Ring is big enough and has enough variety that you can easily give more starting classes. I wouldn't say that would be fine. Like, that would not work in Dark Souls 3 or so, because you don't have as much time to make a character, right? But in Elden Ring, where your starting class is, like, completely irrelevant, because all the stats you have, they don't mean anything. Like, in comparison, I think, what was the average level that you have in Dark Souls 3 at the end? I think, like, level 60 or so. Like, it was not that high, but for Elden Ring, the recommended level to start the DLC is 120. And each level is one skill, or like, you know, 1 point that you can give into stat point. That's what I mean. So, the stat points you start with are completely irrelevant. It is so easy to find like 20 different weapons in like the first 20 minutes of the game. So, what you start with is super irrelevant in the Elden Ring, because you can transition into everything still. So having more starting classes with more gear and stuff, that works perfectly fine, I think. Also new gear, and I'm really looking forward to that, because I don't know what they mean with new gear. Just new armor, because armor is basically just cosmetics, or actually new weapons and stuff. Because if they add new weapons, I'm gonna replay that game so hard. See, can I find any more news about it? Includes full base game, originally launched until after Earth 3 expansion. I wonder if the Tarnished Edition is gonna be cheaper than buying that separately, because that's just a win for people who haven't played Elden Ring yet. Doesn't really say anything about it. New class is Heavy Knight, which looks awesome, honestly. The opposite of what I would play, but awesome. And the Eater's Knight. I think I saw the Eater's Knight on... Oh, the Eater's Knight looks kind of sick. Wasn't it like a... The lightweight high-end weaponry? It's a dexterity one, right? Yeah, it was the dex one that had a slightly higher fate, which is like exactly my playstyle. Dexterity with a bit of fate. Like, I'm really looking forward to that, and just do a new one of Elden Ring, which I wanted to do anyway, but because this is gonna come out, and I'm definitely gonna get that. Actually, I don't even know if you have both already. You have to buy that. Anything. Armor sets will be added upon the release. Oh, it's only armor sets. Oh, sad. I was hoping they would add, you know, new weapons or something. I like the Torrent skins. I hope it's a car. For no particular reason, obviously. Just kind of reading through some of this. Wait, but definitely confirmed this and confirmed edition is a remade set inspired by Lucatiel? I love Lucatiel. Also, I love that they're adding stuff from Dark Souls 2. Everyone's least favorite Souls game, and I'm like, I like Dark Souls 2, it was good. I liked it. 2 new classes. I wonder if it's more than 2 classes and they just didn't reveal everything. I would definitely expect them to add more than they announced, because that's kind of what FromSoft always does. They announce something and then it turns out it's actually way more than just that. What else? Whether possible sets heavily influenced by the designs of Henry of Astoria and Horus. Aww. Why Horus? That's really cool. Knight's Cavalry skin. Oh, a Knight's Cavalry skin for Tauren would be sick. Because then you could do like a full cosplay of the Knight's Cavalry, which would be sick. That would be so cool. I still don't really like fighting on horseback, but just for the, you know, for the bit, that would be really sick. Okay, I feel like I got kind of distracted. I'm not here to talk about Helming, although I could do that for hours. Sorry. My hair is a catastrophe, but that's something I can't fix right now. At least not fully. I don't know why, but my tea is already cold. But let's call it room temperature. Considering the temperature, that's not really cold. It would actually be good if it was cold. So yeah, you know that Elden Ring was inspired by Lord of the Rings? I don't know how I'm gonna bridge that. I don't know how I'm gonna transition from talking about Elden Ring to talking about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. In fact, I don't even know that much about Tolkien myself. Most things I know about him, I've learned in like the last weeks. Not even, maybe the last week, maybe. But I'm really fascinated. Because what I knew of Tolkien before is that he had a huge influence in fantasy. Because, and I talked about that in my Dragon video. Without Tolkien and a bunch of children book authors, we would not even have dragons nowadays. Dragons would just not exist. Which is kind of crazy to think about, considering how huge and widely spread dragons are. Like, you can't really talk fantasy without dragons, right? Dragons are like the big thing. Either as the big villain or as, I don't know, giant instinct-driven beasts of destruction. Like, they have a huge impact in basically every game they appear in. Like, when I think about, like, Baldur's Gate 3, dragons are insanely powerful. And, slight spoiler, can fight one, and it's insanely hard. You know, well, insanely hard, I say that, it's not really hard when you know what you're doing, but first playthrough, that's probably gonna kill you once or twice. Like, it's just, dragons just, they're everywhere in fantasy. You can't do it without, right? Witcher 3 has dragons, and they're insanely powerful, and no one would usually dare to mess with them. They're also super intelligent. Dark Souls has dragons, and they're basically everything. They're the enemies, they're your allies, they're your goal, they're people who love them, they're people who hate them. They're basically everything in Dark Souls. Elden Ring has dragons, and their theory is that one of the previous... Shit, what are they called? Elden Lords. That one of the previous Elden Lords might have been Placidusax, who also originally supposedly had 5 heads. That, what was it, 6? And they're also in the files named as male and female, which is very interesting. I don't know. Useless info. But to think that all that would just not be possible, that they would just not exist if not for, you know, a handful of children book authors and J.R.R. Tolkien. That's crazy to think how huge his impact was. Despite him basically just doing what, you know, he loved. Because from all I read, he had a genuine and very deep love for all those old stories, like the Odyssey, which I wish modern people had. But it's just, I just love that. And I think that's kind of what we need, right? Because people forget about that. That you can be inspired by something, create your completely own story, but still be inspired and reference it without being like, oh yeah, it's just a copy. And don't get me wrong, from what I've heard, he kinda did copy some things from like the Odyssey, but in a way that it's also different, and that kind of what it's all about, right? Also, I feared that a bunch of names were just straight up taken from all stories. Hi, Orion. How am I doing? Now great, because I'm not working. I had I worked 7 out of the last 8 days, and it was horrible, and now I finally have a few days off, so I'm very, very happy. I hope you also, right? And what did you miss? Just me talking about... I guess I talked a lot about Elden Ring for no reason. No, to be fair, I started with just generally talking about what I was playing lately. Then I realized that The Witcher 3 came out 12 years ago, which made me feel old. Then I realized that Elden Ring came out 5 years ago, which made me not feel even older. And I just talked about the upcoming Tarnished edition and checked what's gonna come with that, which apparently only a bit of armor, but I'm still gonna go back to it and play it just because I want to do it anyway. I don't need an excuse to play Elden Ring. I do it because I want to. And I just can't get enough of that game. And now I forgot what I was talking about right now. 5 years already? Yes, 5 years. Let me check. I'm not sure if 5 years was the DLC or the actual game. No, the DLC came out 2024. Which was 2 years ago. And the original Elden Ring came out February 2022, yeah. It's been 4 years. Which is almost 5. 4.5, no. No, yes, it's 4.5 years, more or less. Since the release of Elden Ring, which is crazy to think about. I don't even remember, do I have a complete... I remember that I streamed Elden Ring non-stop when it released. I'm not sure if I saved those streams somewhere. I know for I think I do. I think they're just private somewhere on the channel. I know for sure that I have every single moment of... No, not every single moment. It was a very sad thing of when my internet died and I didn't notice where parts are missing. But I have like 99% of my DLC one saved. Great, I'm waiting for you. Doesn't seem that far. That makes me so devoted. But yeah, it's been a while. I mean, for comparison, when did Night Rain come out? If I find out that Night Rain also released like 2 years ago, I'm gonna cry. May 30, 2025. Okay, Night Rain is only 1 year old. Shit, that's also way longer than I thought. It feels like Night Rain only released like a few months ago, but it's already over a year. Shit. Oh, that hurts. That really hurts. Nightmare is one of those games that I wish I could play or would play more often, but I feel like I'm kinda at the point where on my own it's just not that fun. If I would have like 2 friends to play Nightmare with, I would probably play it way more often, because let's be honest, playing Night Rain is just superior to trying to play Elden Ring co-op. Unless you're using the Seamless Co-op mod. God, stupid hiccup. But that was not the topic I wanted to talk about. Somehow I'm always going back to talking about Elden Ring. No, I wanted to talk about Tolkien. Because for the last few weeks, or mainly the last week, I had a lot of YouTube recommending me stuff about Tolkien, so I learned a bunch of things about Tolkien, and I'm still... I just bit my lip. Ah. Ah. That hurts. Almost lead to Elden Ring. In my case, it does. It sure does. Because I could always play Elden Ring. There's no time of day, no moment in my life in which I could not play Elden Ring. But God, I wanna go back to play Elden Ring. But I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until the Tarnished edition comes out, and then I'm gonna replay Elden Ring with one of the new classes, just for the fun of it. Shit, my lip hurts. I can't think with that. I'm getting distracted. How was I don't know. I'm still fascinated though, because I really love about Tolkien that he had this genuine love for the old stories. And also knew how to respect them, right? Like the 3,000 year, I can't believe it's that old, Odyssey, like Tolkien knew how to make a similar story, but create his own world, but also taking a lot from different myths. The thing is, I don't know much about Lord of the Rings because I actually never watched those. I watched The Hobbit, I did like it, but I never got to watching Lord of the Rings. Maybe mainly because they're really, really long and I just couldn't find the time. And well, originally we just couldn't find a DVD anymore, so I couldn't watch them. And at some point we found them, but I just didn't have the time to watch them. But one day I'm gonna watch them. Which makes this whole stream a bit weird, because I'm talking about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien without ever having watched, you know, the movies or read the book. Which makes this whole thing kinda ironic. The right way to take inspiration, it definitely is. And that's a fascinating thing. Because he took so much. Like, I have heard that there's something about 2 really important trees in Middle-earth. And that was... oh shit, what story was it? It was from Alexander. From Alexander the Great, the story of the Tree of the Sun and the Tree of the Moon. Which I personally do not know that story, although I've heard quite a lot about Alexander's travels. But that particular story I do not know. But still, like, there's so much inspiration from different eras and also different stories throughout history. And yet it's his complete own world. I've also heard a lot that he didn't like allegories? Allegories, I think. So he mostly stayed away from that and just created his own world and was really... what was it? His opinion was that everything needs a history if you create your own world. From everything I've heard about Lord of the Rings, he really did that. And went really deep into giving every folk, every race, its own background, its own story. And just created a beautiful world that also works wonderfully as movies, from what I've heard. It's kind of awkward that I have to say from what I've heard at the end of every sentence because I have no first-hand experience. But that's a fascinating thing. Like, all those parallels and yet making it the same, that's how modern depiction should be. I kind of wanted to complain about the modern Odyssey again. You know what? You know, I wanted to watch a few videos. I forgot to share the screen, right? Anyway, because there's one channel that I've been watching lately, and I really, really like those videos. There are 2 in particular that I wanted to watch. And one is about Tolkien and the new Odyssey, because Tolkien did something right that the Odyssey, the new movie from 2026, does not do right. And this is kind of the video that got me to this channel. And I really liked it. Because this was one of the few videos that I watched and I was like, yeah, I agree with this opinion. Despite it being, you know, pro-Odyssey. Which I'm not. I'm like 100% against basically everything that happens in that movie. What? Robert talking, but it's in French. Yeah, sadly I do not speak French. But it is fine. I appreciate it though. But I feel like I have already... I think I've watched it for now. I should watch The Lord of the Rings first before I watch anything more about, you know, talking. Let me share my screen real quick. Oh, wait, I just realized. Here. Alright, by the way, spoiler warning if you do not know how the Odyssey ends. But the movie has been out for, I think, a month at this point, and also it's not good, and the story is 3,000 years old, so you basically have no excuse to not know about it, if you're interested. So, just wanted to say that. But I'm pretty sure the guy also says it in the video. But it should also be sound, that should maybe also be...
Odyssey ends differently than its 3,000-year-old source text. Instead of staying in Ithaca, movie Odysseus sails into the west.
Wait. I have to go back. Wait.
Instead,
those costumes, they are so bad. And it's crazy because I feared from basically everyone that the costumes are dog shit before I went into the movie, and I was always like, they can't be that bad. And then I see this shit in the movie and I'm like, oh my god, they are that bad. They are that bad. Like, what is this? It's the freaking Bronze Age. Why are you wearing leather armor? What is this? Because it makes your Iron Blade. Understandably. I just don't get it. Like, those... I'm pretty sure some of those were supposed to be Spartans, right? Like, Agamemnon was the king of Sparta. The frick? Why do they not wear any metal armor? Like, it is the Bronze Age, for frick's sake. It's the end of the Bronze Age. Actually, Agamemnon was in full Iron Man suit, so maybe they just didn't have anything left for his soldiers. It's so horrible. I think the worst are those helmets, because every time they put them on, you know, they bend on the side. Like, you can literally see that this is not metal. It's just supposed to look like metal. And it's so sad. And I still do get the reason. Stop, wait, it's so true, and it's so sad. I hate it. Also, let me go a bit to the side so I'm not covering it too much. It's just so bad. And I do understand, like, if you want to argue that they couldn't wear actual metal because they were filming a lot on boats, like on actual boats, on the actual sea, which... I wanted to shout it into the mic, but I'm not gonna do it. But I do like that. That's like one of the few things that I say this movie did completely right. That is 100% what we should do more often. Go out in the freaking beautiful nature and take beautiful actual shots in the actual beautiful freaking nature. I don't need some stupid cliff that is just computer generated, or even worse, maybe AI generated, who knows at this point. Just go out in the freaking world. We have beautiful cliffs out there. Like Harry Potter did it. The Odyssey did it, and the movie's not even good, but it looks beautiful. So that's the only, or one of the few things I give it. Waterproof metal coating is not even that expensive. It's not even about the metal. It's more like, what if someone falls off the boat? You know, it's just a... I understand if they want to argue that it's, you know, a risk, because you don't even know if those actors are all able to swim. At this... Nowadays, there's so many people who don't know how to swim that I wouldn't even hold it against anyone if they can't. So, I get if they want to argue that they thought it's too much of a risk to put them in actual metal armor to, you know, film on an actual boat then. You also have to consider they had a like those giant IMAX cameras that are insanely heavy, so there's also a chance that they were already scratching at like the maximum load you can put on those boats. So I couldn't hold it against them if that's the argument, but they could still make better. Like, this is still a disappointment, nonetheless. Especially because they don't even look like fake metal armor, right? There's like this degree of you can make something look like actual metal that is not. But this is straight up just some leather armor that they took from like the costume store or something. Like, this is disappointing. Find some non-reflective ones. I didn't even think about the reflecting. Does bronze even reflect that much? Like, if you make it like authentic Bronze Age armor, it shouldn't reflect too much. Especially because they should be scratched and all that, because they've been fighting a 10-year war after all. Like, there is a lot of... Like, you could even argue that they threw them away after the war because they thought they don't need it anymore, but that's just stupid. But it would fit into the movie because there's a lot of stupid decisions in the movie, like, in the story of the movie. I don't want to complain about it. Let's just watch the video. I don't want to complain about the Odyssey again. I've been doing that more than enough. I want to try one stream where I do not complain about the Odyssey. Spacebar does not work. Oops. I guess I tapped out.
Of staying in Ithaca, movie Odyssey sails into the West, evoking the same bittersweet image that ends The Lord of the Rings. But while Tolkien's influence on Nolan...
By the way, I've never watched The Lord of the Rings, and now I know how it ends, so I guess I've ruined the movie for myself.
...is ambiguous, the Odyssey's influence on Tolkien isn't. And Tolkien...
By the way, I don't know why, but in my mind, Tolkien happened like so long ago that I'm always surprised that there's like, you know... Oh wait, I just realized my background music is still on. That there's like video on this man, which made me realize, wait a second, this is not even that long. And then I realized, wait, this man was fighting in World War I. This is less than 100 years ago. Well, like roughly 100. That's not even that long ago. That is
words,
just fascinating to think
first
about.
Discovered the sensation of literary pleasure in Homer, which makes sense. The Odyssey...
I hate that he says Homer. I can't even hold it against people, but this is not the Simpsons Homer. This is Homer. It's a slight difference. It's written the exact same, but we need to do this because we need to differentiate between the Simpsons Homer and Homer. Also, I'm impressed that you're multitasking. I wanted to say that, I completely forgot. Like, doing 3 things at the same time. Especially sending important emails. Yeah, I... Got it in French, it's pronounced white by default. That's great. I don't even know how it's in German. I think in German you can do both. Yeah, in German both works. I think the German one is basically the English one now that I think about it. But those languages are basically the same anyway. But see, a lot of people do that. I don't want to say wrong because usually, you know, we don't know how old Greek or old Latin was pronounced because it's dead. It doesn't exist anymore. But that's one of the things that I'm like, please do that just so that we know who you're talking about. Like, from the context, it's obvious that we're talking about Homer. But still, if you just say Homer, it's like, you're probably gonna think of the Simpsons guy.
Is an early example of what Tolkien spent his life.
By the way, I love that he's using those images. Like, this one is... Oh, I can't see that on stream. This is like from 3... Is it a 3,896? Wait, that makes no sense. It says AB 389. That might not be a year. Anyway, I like that there's this painting. I love the old paintings. They're so beautiful.
Building fantastical stories steeped in a sense of real history. Similarly, a through line to Christopher Nolan's eclectic career is
Wait, you had French fans? Didn't know that Odyssey was named because of this. Wait, what? Like, I understand if you don't know Odysseus and thus you do not know about the Odyssey. But if you know Odysseus and the Odyssey, how do you not know that it's named the Odyssey because of him? French Odysseus is named Ulysses. Oh yeah, Ulysses is his Roman name. It's interesting that that's the canon name in French though. Or was it the other way around? Was Odysseus the Greek name and Ulysses the Roman name? Or the Latin name? Or was it the other way around? I don't remember. Wait, let me think. No, I think Ulysses has to be the Roman name. And then it makes sense that in French it's Ulysses. Because French, Italian, and Spanish, those languages are closer related to Latin. While English and German are a bit further, and that's why they have the Greek name. Yeah, that makes sense. I am a linguist, by the way. So I assume Ulysses must be the Roman name, and because, or the Latin name, and because Latin was like the huge influence for those languages, I assume those languages took that. I assume it's also Ulysses in Italian and Spanish then. That's interesting though. In that case, it makes sense though that you would not necessarily know that it's called the Odyssey because of Odysseus. But only if you don't know much. But I feel like if you know the basic story of the Odyssey, it still makes sense. And now I imagine, what if it would have been called the Ulysses? That the Odyssey? Ulysses? Makes sense that it's called the Odyssey. It sounds a bit better than the Odyssey. Ulysses? I don't even know how to say that.
Founding supernatural concepts within a sense of realism. And this goal was at the forefront of his Odyssey.
That doesn't sound right. To be fair, if it would actually be called that, it would probably sound right. But because we are used to it being called the Odyssey, that obviously does sound better and right. But I would objectively say that Odyssey sounds better than Ulysses. Especially because Ulysses kind of sounds like Alice, who's a character from FF14 that I like.
The mantra for everything in the film and all the fantasy elements as well. So give the audience a reason to believe.
In the Odyssey and the Lord of the Rings, this commitment creates a problem at the worst possible place, the ending. The main conflicts of both stories are two...
Wait. I wanna go back to that quote. Where is it? How did it work again? Pixel by pixel. There. I think this is interesting that he says, give the audience a reason to believe. Oh, wait, it's cut off on stream. Well, because the funny part about those stories is that people did believe them, right? I have to go back to Witcher 3 now, because Witcher 3, on one of the cards in Gwent, I think it's the Siri card, has this beautiful quote that says, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's the sense of, when do fairy tales become reality? When people start believing them, right? So, for a lot of people back in the time, they believed those stories, right? That was their religion, basically. So it's kind of weird how we treat it nowadays, because for those people, all this was real. At least to some degree, because they believed in that. Probably with us nerds, get sidetracked fast. Yeah, that's a problem. Some people also call that ADHD, but I've never been diagnosed, so I'm free of every diagnosis.
The audience a reason to believe.
In the Odyssey and the Lord of the Rings, this...
But you know what I mean? Like, you don't need people to have a reason to believe, because those stories, especially the Odyssey, was already believed to be true in the past. You can not, like, you can put it on screen unchanged. You don't need to do much more than explain, like, in one sentence every now and then that this is a goddess and that's her function, right? If you really wanna give people a reason to believe, let them believe what the people used to believe. Why take all of the things that people believed in to replace it with something that people don't want to believe in nowadays? No one wants to believe in everything is miserable and bad, but that's kind of what you show in this movie. Like, everything is bad, everything is horrible, I don't want to get home, I have massive PTSD from the war that I ended. So, it's just... Also, I just want to say Odysseus was not the man fighting on the front line, right? You... How old the age? Oh, ADHD. Spencer, you're not diagnosed. You're definitely something. I don't mind. I could, for all I care, I can have everything. I can be autistic. I can have ADHD. I can have a horrible disease that I don't know about. That's probably gonna kill me in a few years. Who knows? Hope not. But you know what I mean. But I would never say that I have it unless I'm diagnosed, just because people will take it the wrong way. And it's so annoying. So for all I care, I have nothing other than a huge, more than one huge problem. I have a bunch of problems in my life, but being diagnosed with anything is certainly not one of them. But honestly, I also don't think it. Like, even if I would be diagnosed, it would not really change anything. The only thing that would change is I know what's the problem, but I still can't fix it, so... Okay, what do you have? You're just having fun? That's good. Having fun is the most important thing. You should enjoy life.
Commitment creates a problem at the worst possible place, the ending. The main conflict.
Ironically, the ending was one of the few things I liked about the movie.
By their mortal heroes. So instead,
well, not the ending. Like Odyssey, I like the end part. The one in Ithaca when he was doing all those things, right? Because it was the only time I felt like Odysseus was actually behaving like actually Odysseus. With, you know, being smart and cunning and doing his thing, basically, that he was not doing for the whole movie for some reason. Because the whole movie he was basically just miserable and an idiot and trying to kill everyone for no freaking reason. Other than, I feel bad, I don't want to go home, now everyone else has to die, and then he has to realize, oh, actually I do want to go home. It's super stupid. So that I like the end part in Ithaca. Just the end. I was kind of different. I feel like I was... At the end of the movie, I was already at the point where, like, as long as it's not horrible, I'm just okay with it. Like, I was already disappointed. As long as they don't make it worse, which was basically not possible, I'm just okay with it. So I guess I didn't really mind the ending.
Move a story can make. Miracles. After struggling for 10 years, Odysseus makes it back to Ithaca by accepting his insufficiency, and instead trusting fate. This is dangerously close to one of the most unsatisfying tropes in storytelling, a deus ex machina, where gods solve messy conflicts that characters couldn't. In Nolan's script, Calypso tells Odysseus, quote, "You must give yourself to the storm, give up the fight, give up control, and live."
By the way, this makes absolutely no sense, and that's something I haven't thought about while watching the movie, but it makes literally no sense. Because by giving himself to the storm, why would that bring him anywhere close to home? The sea, as well as the storm, are created or managed by the two gods he pissed off the most. The storm was raging because his crew pissed off, but not directly Zeus, but I guess in the Nolan movie it was Apollo. The version I know, it was Helios, but they're basically the same gods, so it doesn't matter. And then he complained about it to Zeus, who then, you know, punished his crew. And Poseidon was pissed in general. Like, if I remember right, in the Trojan War, Poseidon was on the side of Troia. For some reason, I don't remember exactly why, but it doesn't matter. Like, he was on the opposite side. And later they attacked one of his sons, blinded him. Like, Poseidon was also pissed. So why the frick would the waves and the storm bring him anywhere close to anything that is not his own death? There was so much shit in the movie that I didn't even realize. Yeah, that's the problem. I feel like if you really watch the movie again in detail, you probably notice so many goddamn things that are also bad that you just didn't notice because you were too occupied being disappointed over the first bad thing that happened, or the other thing that just happened. And that's the worst. And I still don't understand how I understand how the critics can love it. It's Nolan and it's a beautiful movie. That's all they care about. But the story in itself, like, if it's... even if it's not the Odyssey, the story would be shit. Because it's just you're just watching a character trying to sabotage himself for, like, I don't know how long because I lost track of time, but let's say for the first 2/3 of the movie. Despite him supposedly being one of the greatest heroes in existence. That is so sad. Like, the only hero that you could put on top of him is maybe Achilles, who's depicted and described as, like, the perfect hero in Greek times. But that's... it's just sad. Did I tap out again, or can I not continue?
Lying down in a raft, Odysseus arrives where all his resources and cleverness failed to bring him home, which is beautiful.
Cleverness. You know, the cleverness that he depicted in basically every decision he made in the movie.
Thematically, but would be unsatisfying as the movie's ending.
Oh wait, does that scene
bring him home?
Wait.
Which is beautiful thematically.
This scene where Telemachus and his bodyguard, I'm not sure if they ever mentioned his name, were training. Right off the start. That was one of the best scenes in the movie. Maybe because I mentioned that I was sitting in one of those D-Max chairs. So every time their swords collided, you felt that in the chair. And it was so good. This was hands down one of the best scenes in the movie. And it had nothing to do with the whole story. It just looked nice. I feel like they actually put effort into the fighting here. And the lesson that he learns here is also really good. Like, basically everything here is good. And then later in the movie, there was a scene where Telemachus is fighting someone. And the whole time, I had this scene in mind. And I was like, okay, any moment now, he's gonna use what he learned at the start of the movie. It's gonna be a callback. It's gonna be good. I did not notice him doing that. Maybe because the movie was so... like, it was just jumping between Odysseus and Telemachus the whole time. That it was really hard to get anything. Maybe that was just me. I'm not used to watching long movies. I'm not used to watching movies in cinema anymore. So maybe my eyes and brain just, couldn't keep up. Maybe I'm just getting old, who knows. But it felt so fast towards the end of the movie that I barely saw any choreography. Like, they could have just randomly been swinging swords and I would not have noticed. Because everything was so fast. It kept switching location. Camera was going left and right super fast all the time. Like, I swear I could not see straight movements. And it was so sad because I was like, okay, any moment now they're gonna, camera straight on those two. And Telemachus is gonna do what he learned at the start of the movie. It's gonna be a callback. It's gonna be great. And it just didn't happen. And I was so confused because I felt like, why is the scene even there? And I mean, both scenes. Like, why do we have the scene at the start? Which, again, I love the scene. This was good. This got me hooked. For a moment, I was really interested in the movie when this happened. And then it just, went downhill. But why is this scene there if it's not supposed to be a lesson that he uses later? That is so weird. The movie is super long. The Odyssey is a super long story. So if you have to cut something out, then maybe cut out this part if you're not making proper use of it. Because, as I said, I love this scene, but this scene was not necessary for the whole story. So maybe cut that out and just take more time for the actual Odyssey. But it certainly made some weird decisions that I don't understand.
But would be unsatisfying as the movie's ending. Similarly, in the final moments of Frodo's quest,
And
the
then the
ring
movie
is
happened,
destroyed
yeah.
not because of him,
Yeah.
but despite him.
The ring is mine.
To be fair, nobody could have destroyed the ring voluntarily, but Tolkien doesn't pull any punches when he says, quote, Frodo indeed failed as a hero. He did not endure to the end. The ring is destroyed instead by the involvement of other forces. In the words of Tolkien, quote, the other power then took over, ensuring the victory of, quote, the cause, but not the hero. And even
I would like to pause and talk about that too, but I literally know nothing about Lord of the Rings. I've never watched the movie. Everything I know, I've basically learned about from hearsay or from... Maybe this is a scene that I should
though
not
these
have
kinds
on
of
camera.
miracles are fair.
I just realized what I'm seeing in the background. What was I? Oh yeah, so I can't really say much about it, but I'm really intrigued by like the character of Frodo now, because everything I've heard makes him such an interesting character that I feel like I don't often get to see in stories nowadays, because everyone has to be a great hero nowadays. Like, everyone is just, either they start out secretly the strongest or something like that, or they later become the strongest. It's especially bad in anime, where basically every protagonist either starts out super strong, which is sadly, you know, a guilty pleasure of mine, those overpowered protagonists. But like, every character just has to become the strongest at some point, no matter what. So it's really intriguing to just have this character that is not the strongest and never becomes the strongest. But that's exactly why he is the right person for the job. So the more I hear about it, the more I'm intrigued and the more I want to watch this. And then I realize, oh shit, that's like, what, 9 hours? Like 3 hours per movie or something like that. That's gonna take some time.
Play in a magical world like Middle-earth. Frodo's lack of agency in resolving what the entire story was building towards threatens
Also, hey, the costumes are really beautiful. Like, I feel like everything I see of this movie looks good, especially considering that the movies are quite old.
to make its ending unsatisfying. But Tolkien, probably echoing the Odyssey, solves this by separating the story's main conflict from its final conflict, the Scouring of the Shire, where the hobbits return from their quest to experience, quote, one of the saddest hours in their lives, as their home has been corrupted into what Sam Gamgee calls, quote, worse than Mordor. Initially, the hobbits expect this conflict will also be resolved through higher powers. Merry takes comfort that, quote, we've got Gandalf with us. But in a move that's both funny and a little mean, Gandalf ditches the hobbits, forcing them to finally become the rescuers rather than the rescued, saying, quote, you must settle its affairs yourselves. That is what you've been trained for, and I have no longer any fear at all for any of you. What
By the way, I'm not sure if we mentioned that. I watched this video already, but it's been like a week or so. But this is also the exact opposite of what happens in Nolan's Odyssey. I can't say if it's in the original Odyssey, because I don't really remember Telemachus being that important, but then again. But you have this whole scene, like you have the scene at the start where Telemachus is training, then you have this whole journey that Telemachus does, and Telemachus never learns to do something on his own, right? You watch videos behind the scenes to see how much the actors love film. Yeah, I've heard so many stories about things that happen behind the scenes. Like, what was it? What is it, Viggo Mortensen, or whatever his name is, who kind of befriended the horse that he had on set and later bought it. Which is just, that's cool. I love that. I think he also bought it for a stunt woman who also really fell in love with her horse. Like, that's really cool, for example. Well, there's so much more to it. It is so great. I've also had stories about, like, them making a lot of jokes on set and stuff. Like, and also a lot of, or not a lot, but a bunch of things that were not supposed to happen were so good that they just put them into the movie. there was the scene, I think it was really early in the movie, where I don't know his name, the name of the actor, but the one who plays Gandalf hits his head. And it was not, like, that was not planned. He generally just hit his head, but he's such a good actor that he just kept playing. And it was so good that I just kept it in. He kept the sword everywhere with him. Oh, that's also cool. Even restaurants shopping centers, that's maybe problematic, but kind of cool. Like, I think it makes a huge difference when people really get into their role and also really love their role. Because the acting just definitely gets, like, next level, right? Like, that's a level you can't achieve if you don't really understand and live the role you're playing. So the most adapted survival for starting and even fishing. This character is a godlike, that's great. That's also good casting then, by the way. Which is also something that nowadays is, you know, kinda like a side objective. Nowadays it's more like, how many famous actors can we get for our movie, instead of how many good people can we get for our movie, which is very sad. And I don't get it. God, I can't stop complaining about everything, but why do we need to have famous actor in every freaking role? Why can we not cast, like, perfect people for the role? Because they are out there, they're just not famous, but they probably also cost less. Which means you can hire someone who costs less, or, you know, asks for less, and then have more money for the movie. Like, it's a win-win. Why do we have to cast someone who doesn't fit the role just because they're famous? The thing is basically perfect casting all the way. The only thing I feared that you could argue is maybe not perfect is that shit. I feared his name just earlier when I watched the video, and I already forgot the person who plays Frodo. That was a bit young, because in the books Frodo is like 30 or something, like 33 or something like that, and the actor was like 18 at the time. So that's like the only thing where you could argue. Also, by the way, also from a video of this guy, who I learned that Frodo in the movies is very different from the one in the books. But a lot of changes they made for the movie are like, you know, stuff that Tolkien would probably have approved. Like, it feels like they really thought well about that and tried to respect it and keep the thought at least there. It's basically the opposite of what the Odyssey did. Like, I really need to watch Lord of the Rings at some point, because it feels like not only the original story, like the books, seems to be so full of love for the medium, especially a medium that didn't exist yet, because fantasy was not a genre when Tolkien wrote his book. Tolkien called it a fantasy, like a fairy story, basically a fairy tale, because fantasy stories didn't exist yet. So just think that one of the biggest, greatest fantasy stories ever is also basically the first actual fantasy story is crazy. That no one ever matched that. At least so far. Not that far off, because... yeah, it's not that far off. Like, it was a really... when I watched the video, I was like... kind of confused. Let's put it like that. Because in one sentence, they say... that hobbits age different. Right? That they get like 100 on average. And age slower. And then the next sentence they say... but it was kind of weird that they casted an 80-year-old to play the role of Frodo, and I was like, why? Didn't you just explain why that makes sense? Because I agree with you, it is kind of correct, right? Because the age gap is basically they're in the same point of their life, like in comparison, right? And at the exact same age. I think it would be weirder to have a 30-year-old play him, because you know, a 30-year-old has done like way more of their life than the Hobbit would have done of his life, and that, like, in relation, it's kind of correct. Maybe not exactly, but the age thing I don't understand. And the other argument of they changed the character of Frodo between the books and the movies, I can't judge that. That argument I understand a bit more though. Like that was a bit more understandable. The age argument I couldn't follow. I did not understand why that was a problem. Or why people would complain about that. Because, you know, you can't, like, a human is playing the role of the Hobbit, so obviously he can't be the exact same age. And for those things, I feel like the age of the actor should not matter. It should matter how they look. Or how you can make them look. Movies are kind of weird in that regard. And if they can play the role. So I feel like the age should not be that important. Like obviously an 18-year-old should not play the role of a 12-year-old boy, logically, right? Unless it's like Benjamin Button, right? But you know what I mean? Like at some point, of course, the age plays a role, but as long as they look comparable, like if the looks and the age comparable, I feel like what does it care? Like I wouldn't care if a 20-year-old plays the role of a 30-year-old or the vice versa, because they wouldn't look that different. So that was a bit of a weird argument. I don't get that. I have to agree.
Follows is the hobbits using everything they've learned since leaving the Shire 900 pages earlier to reclaim their home. If that last part sounds familiar, it's because the Odyssey did it 3,000 years earlier. In the poem, Odysseus returns home, massacres the suitors, and reigns in Ithaca. But Tolkien notably tweaked this formula.
By the way, I don't remember. I think this is mentioned here too. But no, wait. No, I think he's getting to that. I think I remember he's getting to that.
Homer's Odysseus still has Athena's help while fighting the suitors. Tolkien removed...
Yeah, that is so weird. Athena's role in Nolan's Odyssey is so bad. Because the only thing she does is be a symbol that of something that later on they're neglecting anyway. She never helped him. Not only did she not help him, she basically only existed in his head. And the only thing she did was getting beheaded. Like, she was the argument of, you never know if someone you meet is a god in disguise. Like, she was just a symbol of that. Nothing else. She did not help him. It felt like every time she talked to him, Odysseus just lost his mind and turned into an idiot. Because I feel like every time he saw her, the next decision he made was like the opposite of the right one. On purpose. So it felt super weird. I don't know why Athena even showed up. I don't know why they decided that Athena has to be the goddess that shows up in the movie when other gods were way more important. Like, how about Poseidon? You know, the father of the guy you show. And was like the main antagonist among the gods. Okay. Yeah, I would say he was like the main antagonist among the gods that made the journey so hard. But whatever. It's just... By the way, I think the scene at the end could have been so much cooler if he would have gotten help by Athena. And Hermes. Yeah, that's also a thing. Like, Hermes you don't even have to make look like a god. Because Hermes' thing basically is that he's everywhere, right? Like, you don't even need to make him look super special. You can literally just make it a guy delivering a letter, right? Like, that's basically what Hermes would have been anyway. He's that. He's a messenger. So, just give him super normal gloves. And I mean, Hermes was the god of everything anyway. Like, he was the god of the thieves. He was god of the wanderers. He was god of the... Well, traveler, wanderer. Like... Iolus. The wing bat. They didn't even mention that. That was so weird. I understand though, because it's like a minor story. Like, if you have to cut something out, I get that you would cut out that part. Then again, they showed so many things that were not relevant that would have been probably better to show. But I get that they did not do that. But then again, it would have been nice to see, because it feels like, for what they were going, you know, making him depressed and everything, having him almost be home, and then his crew messing him over, like basically freaking him over completely, by basically stealing from the chef. Like, he is their boss, he is their leader, and they just steal from him, and that causes them to basically go back where they started. They were almost... Like, I feel like if you want to show how depressed he is, that would have been the thing to show. Because nothing feels worse than almost being there, and then having your crew being idiots and steal from you, and basically teleporting you back to the start. Like, there's nothing worse that I could imagine. So why do you cut out that? Heck, you might as well have cut out the whole... Oh shit, what was her name? Skylla. Like the whole Skylla part. You can cut out that. And I feel like it wouldn't change that much because you didn't really do much with that anyway. It just wasn't another explanation to why his crew died. But you didn't give him the epic moment of, okay, I put on my armor, I put on shield, and... I don't even remember, was it sword or spear? I don't remember what his weapon was. But you know, getting geared up, standing in front of everyone and trying to protect them. You didn't give him that, so you might as well cut out that story. And leave in the Ayala story. Because that one really feels like what you wanted to show. Like, why is he depressed? Why is he sad? Why is he miserable? But, whatever.
The magic user from the story and scales the threat down to something hobbits could believably beat. That's Tolkien's trick. The miracle wins the war, but the last fight achieves exactly what he and Nolan are always after.
So give the audience a reason to believe.
Which brings us 70 years later to Nolan's Odysseus, standing in the exact same position as the hobbits before the Scouring. He's finally home, delivered by a miracle, and in danger of an unsatisfying ending. In the original poem, Athena explicitly protects Odysseus. When the suitors begin hurling spears at him, the goddess, quote, made vain most of their casts, so that one man threw his spear against the pillar, another into the door. But Nolan removes Athena from the conflict the same way Tolkien removes Gandalf, positioning the fight squarely on the shoulders of his hero. But in contrast to both Tolkien...
God, the forest scene was so awful. They could have cut that. I feel like the forest scene did literally nothing for this. Like, literally nothing. The only thing that happened was they went into a forest, had a weird encounter, went out of the forest, somehow forgot that they have swords and can actually try to cut down trees for some effing reason. I still don't understand how you cannot even think of trying to cut down the trees that block your path when you're in a life-threatening situation. I wanna cry. And then they lost 2 ships. That's it. Like, that's really something I could have just completely cut out. And then they wouldn't have to show us this embarrassing design of the giants. Because for some reasons, those giants, or, you know, whatever they... What were they called? The cannibalistic? I think they were called cannibalistic giants, right? Something like that. But whatever they were called. Like, that they have full metal armor. But apparently not even any way of communication. That's just sad. I've complained about it. I didn't even remember them. Because it doesn't feel like one of the major parts, right? I feel like a lot of things felt way bigger, way more important. And that part, I really hate how they looked. Because they had those fully geared metal armors, but then you show them as not being able to talk, just being like, we cut you down like machines. Like, for a second, but if you just see that scene, you could believe it's like a science fiction thing, because all of a sudden there are those, you know, metal giants coming out of the forest, cutting down normal humans. It's just weird.
And the believability that Nolan says was guiding this movie, his Odysseus still faces a god-sized threat, standing in the middle of a room, holding a long-ranged weapon and surrounded by dozens of suitors. This section of the story that was supposed to reward our suspension of disbelief at watching a man on a raft magically guided back home, instead becomes a man magically turning into Jason Bourne, as his enemies magically lose the common sense to just rush him.
Get them, boys!
I have to be honest. At first, I did kinda enjoy that scene. Because there was this early part of the fight where the suitors didn't have weapons, right? They were barehanded. And also scared. because they you know, it felt kind of realistic because I heard such great stories of Odysseus. Like, they knew him as a great hero, so they thought they have no chance against him, especially without weapon. So I felt like it felt okay to just see him shoot them down as long as they didn't have weapons. But then there was this moments where they got weapons, and the whole time I was just wondering, why are you fighting him 1 versus 1? You just have to come at him with 3 people, and he just can't defend himself. That was the only thought I had the whole time. Why are you attacking him 1 by 1? So the scene turned worse the longer it got. And that's sad.
Simply put,
because I would have loved to see like Athena do like, you know, I don't know, a ray of light into your face so you can't aim. Like, some of this shit, it would have probably looked weird, maybe even funny, but it would have probably made the scene a bit better. Also, it would have been nice to see something, you know, the gods actually existing, for example. Granted, the movie does a really good job making you believe that the gods did not exist, because despite him seeing one of them, it feels like, yeah, they really didn't exist. An enemy in a group in a movie, you instantly lose all of your critical thinking skills. I guess. If you're not the leader, and you're just some, I don't know, low foot soldier, you can only follow instructions, and if you don't get instructions, the only thing you know is how to swing your sword in one direction, and then cut down by everyone who knows more than 2 moves. The thing is, there's movies that do that better, right? Where you have the feeling that multiple people attack at the same time, or they don't attack because they would get into each other's way. But the suitors were not even an organized group. It's not like, let's say, the Mafia, right? It's not like a group of soldiers. Do we call them soldiers? I don't know what they are for the Mafia. But, you know, it's not like they were a group of people that have worked together. It was a group of random suitors. And maybe, you know, 2 or 3 of them knew each other. Something like that. Like, they loosely knew each other, but they've never fought together. So, you can't even say, oh, that's part of the strategy, because they have a plan. Like, that's how they usually operate. In most movies, you can at least say, well, yeah, they don't want to get into each other's way because they know how each of them fights and when they have to act. But that was literally just a random group of suitors that half of them probably never fought in an actual life-threatening situation before, because they were all just random guys from the country that never fought in the war. So the fact that they don't just all attack at the same time and hit each other, that's also something. They also didn't hit each other. That's so weird.
Nolan removes the dais.
Also, I like the fact you can't read that, but it says exclusive footage from the Odyssey.
Simply put,
Like, exclusive footage for the Odyssey. I love that. That's one of the reasons why I really like the videos of this guy, and I've watched a bunch of them lately, because they are really funny. I like those jokes.
Nolan removes the dais, but keeps the ex machina.
Oh, I hated that scene. I hated that scene. Because the flashback scene where they behead Athena's statue, I hated that. First off, it was the last flashback, and at that point I was just not interested in them anymore, because I felt like I got the message. Like, they killed everyone, they did horrible things to the people there. Thanks, I got it, can we move on? I don't need... Like, I'm not here to watch the Iliad. I'm here to watch the Odyssey. Why do you show me the Iliad all the time? So that was one thing, and then the scene of they behead the statue at the same time as the girls beheaded is like... Okay. Yeah. So, you waited until the end of the movie to show me what everyone was talking about. But the whole situation at that point in the main story was that we don't give a frick about this rule anymore. It felt so weird. Because Odysseus was like, there are no gods among humans. The suitors were like, there are no gods among humans. And then at the end of the story, you're like, oh, by the way, there are gods among the humans. Like, no, man. You can't. You can't have a movie where even the main protagonist is telling me that's not true, and then literally show me that it's the opposite. Like, why do you do everything to paint Odysseus as an idiot?
Jarring for more than one reason. It doesn't just fumble Nolan's realism, it also cuts against Odysseus as a character. Unlike Achilles, Odysseus is an unconventional hero.
The adjective that's most often applied to Odysseus in English is wily. And I didn't want to simplify that to bring him into the sort of hero's position.
The irony is that the wily version of this fight is sitting in the source material. Instead of standing in the open, Homer's Odysseus uses the high ground and posts a guard at the hull's one passage, where, quote, one man could hold against all if he were a fighter. Odysseus doesn't...
I love that quote, by the way. I feel like this really shows how Odysseus was thinking. Because Odysseus was not like Achilles, right? Achilles was basically like, I don't need strategy, I can't die anyway, I just go in and defeat everyone, right? And that goes for a lot of heroes in Greek mythology, because they just either had the right equipment, like Perseus, who had basically magical artifacts from almost every god. Like, what did he have? Like, he had the shoes of Hermes, then he had the shield of Athena. Like, he basically had the equipment, right? Or Hercules, who was just naturally born like a superhuman. Or Achilles, who was invulnerable. Like, they all had something that made combat just that much easier. Odysseus didn't have that. Odysseus was, per definition, like 90% normal human. Maybe some godly ancestors, but he didn't have any superpowers. He was just really smart. And the fact that he thinks like, hey, a single man can defeat, or at least hold against all, if he has the right precision, that just shows how much smarter he is. Which is something that the movie completely failed to show. Because he did stupid decisions from start to end. So, he's supposed to be extremely intelligent, cunning, but in the film he was more of a brute. Yeah, he was not just that. I feel like he was also completely emotional driven. Like, in the books, like everything you hear about Odysseus is like that he's a cold, calculating, wily man, which is a word I've never heard in his like as a description of him. But like, he's this very smart, less of a fighter but more of a strategist kind of character. And in the movie he shoots the giant, or that's the Cyclops, because he was angry. Why? The actual Odysseus would never have done that. Odysseus would have been super angry, but rational. And he would understand that by doing that, he would probably kill even more of his men, and he can't risk that. So he just accepted the loss. And the movie did the opposite, and that I hated that. The worst thing is I think I knew about that shortly before I went into the movie. And until it happened, I felt like, nah, that can't happen. That's so stupid. But it did. And it was so stupid. Like, it is so out of character that I couldn't believe it actually happened, despite having known about it, until it did happen. It is so out of character.
Beat 100 men. He constructs the best scenario to fight overwhelming odds while leveraging the protection of a god. But instead of keeping Athena, shrinking the threat, or letting his wily hero be wily, Nolan undercuts what he says matters most.
I mean, I think endings are everything in movies.
Yeah. But this raises a question.
Telling Polyphemus' name. I respect how they made Polyphemus. Because from what I've heard, it was not CGI. It was like a giant doll or something that they had. Like, I respect the effort they put into creating that in real life. Because that is really cool, and I think that makes movies so much better if it's like an actual model that they make. Even if it's like, tuned down, or if they improve it in post-production. Like, I don't mind, but if actually having a giant life-sized model, or at least comparable, and actually working with that, that makes the role acting so much better, and it makes it look so much better in the done movie. So I respect how they made it on a technical and like a filming level. Story-wise, I hate everything they did to Polyphemus. It's the most famous scene in the story. Almost everyone knows about it. And then they take away the most important aspect of Polyphemus, and that is his rational, human-like mind. Or maybe rational is not the right word. Like, his... What's the right word? Basically, everything that makes him human, they stripped away and turned him into a complete monster. Let's put it like that. Because that's not true. Polyphemus and the Cyclops in general were basically just more simple humans, right? They were less advanced. They were maybe a bit dumb. But they were mostly normal humans with just one eye. And a bit taller. Just maybe a bit more simple. Like, they were definitely part monster, but they were also part human-like. Which makes sense, because they are also... Like, Polyphemus is the son of Poseidon. Those are very mindless monsters. I feel like most of the mindless monsters are cursed humans that were turned into monsters by the gods. But most of the ones that are born that way, they have a resemblance of intelligence. Although I can't confirm that for the Minotaur now that I think about it. But I think the Minotaur also was, to some degree, human. Because he was just born that way. For the Minotaur, I would have to check. I'm not even sure if there is enough info about the Minotaur to say that. Because I feel like the Minotaur was a very... But sorry about the Minotaur was not really focused on the Minotaur. But it's a different one. But Polyphemus not talking, and the worst part, and I can't forgive them that. Two of the soldiers in the movie talk about it. Like, they're horribly aware of the fact that this monster was able to talk, and that I could have talked to it. And I think that's a crime. Like, this is literally a crime on the Odyssey. I just can't believe it. Like, the moment when there were two soldiers just like, wait, do you hear that? It can talk. Maybe we could have tried to talk to it. Was like, I was so close to face palming and just, you know, just putting my hand in my hands in the theater. I was so close to just despairing there. I couldn't. Poseidon that week. Also counting non-human Poseidon copulated with way more things that is no, that is brother. Yeah, that's like Poseidon is like the freaky kind of guy. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, Hades, the guy that was in the underworld and, you know, punishes the worst criminals, is like the most normal guy, because the only thing he did was kidnapping a woman that was beautiful and that he loved, but he treated her well. I mean, he kind of held her hostage, that's true, but from most stories, she was not really against him. Like, she didn't hate him or anything. She just didn't want to be in the underworld and be with her mother, which is relatable. But there's also stories where she basically becomes the queen of the underworld and embraces her role. So, like, there are different versions of it, and she didn't suffer in most of them. And I don't think there's many or any stories about Hades having anyone else. So Hades is like the normal guy despite his role. And Zeus is like he's married. His woman is literally the goddess of marriage. And he keeps breaking that non-stop with humans. But at least he does it with humans. He does it in different shapes. But the humans can't really say no. You can't even say the humans are freaky because they have no choice. Like, what do they want to say? Oh no, you know what? I don't want to sleep with this god. Like, for them, it's an honor. Even if it's like a ball or something. But Poseidon is the weird one who just slept with monsters and non-humans. And I feel like mermaids or dryads and all that, like those are not the human-like characters, but he also did with non-human-like characters. Not a lot of the hell. Yeah, like, not exactly, but it's a simplified one. But all that's goods and bad. True. Like I thought I said Lord of the Underworld, right? Because the Underworld is basically everything combined, right? I forgot what it was called. Elysium was the good part, and Tartar was basically the hell part of it. That's good. But yeah, that's a cool thing. I like Hades as a character because his job and what he does is basically just keeping the lore and making sure that humans, no matter if dead or alive, follow the rules and that you get your just punishment, so that that is not an escape. Those other things. But no. But yeah, I really like Hades as a character that he's just making sure that you get what you deserve and can't just, just die to escape your punishment, which I think is a good concept. And it's not like you're, eternally forced to suffer. I think, actually I don't remember how it was in Greek mythology, but usually in most mythologies, like, if you just did some minor bad things, then you usually just, you get your punishment in the afterlife, and then you might not go to, heaven or the equivalent of heaven, but at least, get some peaceful afterlife after your punishment. It's but it's most easy to negotiate with. Yeah. Always gives out of advice, people taking things out from him. Not just that, like, there's the story of Hercules when he goes to the into the underworld, because for one of his, what they call, labors, he had to he had to bring Cerberus or Kerberos to this one idiot king, his cousin, I think it was. So he went to the underworld and just, negotiated with Hades, and Hades was like, sure, you can take him with you, but you have to do it without your weapons. So he basically just grabbed Kerberos and kidnapped him, or took him out of hell with just, I think he used a piece of wood and the pelt of the Nemean lion as protection. And other than that, just really grabbed the dog and took him out of the underworld. And then later brought him back. So, and Hades accepted it because, he gave him a task, he did it, and he couldn't complain. But the fact that he didn't say no, but actually gave him a chance, that is more than Zeus often does. Also, Zeus often feels like this kind of guy. Like, despite being the leader, right? He's the highest god, he's the father. What would you call him? Like, basically the king of the gods. Despite that, he often feels like he doesn't really want to do his job. Because when I read up the story of Penelope, when his sister Demeter comes to him, telling him to bring her daughter back, it's often described as Zeus not really wanting to act. Like, he didn't really want to intervene there, because it made it feel like he just doesn't want to, but like he doesn't care really. And in so many situations, Zeus is just, it feels like Zeus doesn't really care. Like, he just wanna do whatever he wanna do, which is usually sleeping with various women, and doesn't really care about anything else, or even about keeping order. And he's also really unjust with his punishments. like when you consider Prometheus. Prometheus helped humanity, and just because of that, he was punished to eternal pain and suffering. There was no relation to what he did. Because... Actually, no, wait. What was the story? He helped the humans because he tricked... Like, he helped them trick Zeus. Zeus wanted to punish the humans and took away the flame from them. Right? I think that's how it was. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, Prometheus helped the humans make an offering to Zeus that was basically only skin and bones. And because of that, every future offering would be the same, because that, like, it was basically the first offering they would make. And because he helped, or because they tricked him, Zeus took away the fire from humans. Or Prometheus thought it was unjust, brought it back to the humans, and then he ordered him to be tied to a rock and have his liver eaten every day, and it regrows every day. Like, it's a very unjust punishment, especially because he punished the humans instead of the one that, you know, should maybe take the blame on all that. And the only reason why Prometheus was saved is because Hercules messed up, but that's a different story. Orpheus story. Orpheus was a poor guy and failed the trial. I probably have read or heard of the story of Orpheus, but it's been so long, I only know how it ends. So I only remember Orpheus' story about how he goes to the underworld, has a deal with Hades, and then messes up right before the end. So I actually don't remember what the start of Orpheus' story was. No one's used to punish you, he has imagination. Yeah. Wasn't the most of the horrible punishments from Zeus? Like, wasn't Sisyphus also... Was it Sisyphus? Like, the guy with the boulder. I think that was also Zeus' thing, right? I think he does it in the underworld, but I think the punishment was ordered by Zeus. Like, it's all those stupid, eternal suffering punishments are usually Zeus. While Hades is mostly fair. I think also the deal Orpheus does with Hades sounds fair. Like, you can take her with her, but you're not allowed to look at her until you're out. That is kind of fair. And when Orpheus fails, Hades just takes what, you know, what was part of the deal. So, Zeus is a really, really unjust god. But it kind of fits religion in general. Because later on, Christianity, no, not Christianity, like, Judaism also had a very wrathful, unfair god. Like, there's a story in the Bible about this just a normal farmer who was very religious and always did his prayers, always did his offerings to God. And just because the devil challenges God to, if he would not be nice to him and if he would punish him for no reason, he would stop believing in you and stop making offerings and prayers to you. God starts taking away everything from this poor farmer. Like, he makes his crop wither, he kills his cows, I think he makes his wife and daughter sick until they die. And then when the farmer has nothing left and still prays to God, and, you know, still gives him prayer and everything he has left, God is just like, you see, this man still believes in me. That's how deep his belief is. And that's where the story ends. I think he's not helping him or makes him recover in any way. It's one of the most awful stories that I remember from the Bible. That God just randomly punishes a man just because the devil challenges him. Which not only makes God look really stupid and the devil really smart, because the devil gets what he wants, right? Like, one human suffered horribly for no effing reason. So in a way, the devil is the winner in that That's my interpretation of that. So it's super awful, it's super random, and super weird. And for some reason, that's a common thing for gods in the old times. That they're such wrathful and unfair for no reason sometimes. Came to bring back the soul of Slav. There's always a name that I have trouble pronouncing. He told him to walk back out without looking back. Then when be out, could turn around and she'll be there. Yeah, that's what I meant. But he turned. Yeah, I think it was right before the end, right? Because he couldn't hold to him anymore, and just had to turn around and then. Yeah. Like, all of his story is a really sad one. But it's also, like, you can't blame anyone but him, because... Yeah, just before the end, yeah. That's, like, it's a sad story, but I think it's also a tragedy. Like, it's meant to be without happy ending. Actually, a tragedy is not without happy ending. That's like a modern misconception. Either way, I'm not gonna go into literature. But... The good, like, what I think is good about the story, what I like about the story is that Hades gives him a really fair deal. Like, it's not normal to have souls leave the underworld. Like, they're usually bound to it. Like, going in there is easy. No one is really stopping you from going to the underworld. Getting out is the problem. And Hades being like, okay, hey, you can have her, but you cannot look at her until you're out, is an insanely fair deal. Like, you would even say that's a deal that is so in favor of Orpheus that it's almost unfair for Hades. So, when he fails, you really can't blame Hades for that. Like, Hades couldn't have possibly made it easier for him. And that's why I just like Hades as a character, or like as a... I don't know, as a character in those old stories more than I do Zeus or Poseidon. I don't think, though, that Poseidon creates the cooler monsters. But he's also kind of awful. Because I think Medusa in some versions is also only turned into a monster because Poseidon did something to her in Athena's temple. But Athena can't punish Poseidon, so she just punishes Medusa. That is also really awful, and it's all Poseidon's fault, and he did not intervene or help her in any way. It's like... This gives out trials fitted for one. Hard trials, but fair, not impossible. Yeah, that's... I mean, being hard, considering that they are asking something for him, is fair. And I think for how... Like, how doable they are... I think it's almost surprising how doable they are. Like, there's no trick. Because usually in stories like that, there's like some catch, right? Like... Oh, you can't look at her, but there are mirrors everywhere, or something like that, right? Like, there's usually a catch. But Hades didn't do that. Hades was just completely fair. You can have her if you do this. No strings attached. But Hades is also smart. That's also the thing. Hades is smart. And he knows what he's dealing with. So he obviously gives them a real challenge. For them personally, that on paper sounds almost too easy. So in a way, you could say, yeah, Hades is giving them a purpose, a really hard channel for the, for the person that is asking. But it's his right. He could also just say no, because there's no reason for Hades to let anyone leave the underworld. To be fair, it's actually against what he's supposed to do. Because he's supposed to keep them in the underworld. That's one of his main roles. So the fact that he even considers letting someone go is like a huge favor. But I think this... I don't even remember where we were in the videos.
What about Peter Jackson's trilogy? His Lord of the Rings movies cut the Scouring of the Shire, the very chapter that supposedly saved its ending. The catch is
I think that's sad, by the way. I would have really liked... Like, I've never watched Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, man, that sounds kind of cool. I kind of want to see that in the movie. It's kind of sad that it's not in the movie. the god of the underworld, and which is all things will eventually come back to him. Who doesn't really care. That's true. That true. Like, no matter what, death is the one thing no one can escape. So, I guess Hades has the luxury of just chilling because he knows sooner or later everything arrives in his domain. What he has to do is give it fire because he can't go for free. Yeah, that's fair. Like, you can't just give out something for free, especially not the gods, because you know that if you give out something for free that is not a challenge or that no strings attached, everyone is just gonna ask you for something, and then you have chaos. So just to keep order, you have to make it a bit difficult, or you have to give it a trial, or you have to make it challenging in some way. But that's all. Like, he has the luxury of just waiting. It also, I would say, it makes him a very patient character, because nothing he does needs an immediate conclusion. Like, Hades is willing to wait, in the worst case, even 100 years, because not, you know, depending on what race or what person lives, they might live that long. But he knows that if he waits long enough, they will eventually all end up anyway, in the underworld anyway. So it makes him a very patient but also calculating character, which makes him really cool. It's maybe one of the things that I don't like about God of War, because I feel like God of War does not do that part of Hades justice. Then again, I've never played God of War that is not the newer ones, so I can't say for sure, but I feel like I've seen the fight against Hades, and I think mechanically it looks cool, but just design-wise and all, I feel like Hades, it doesn't really do him super justice. I really like how Hades is depicted in, well, the game Hades, but he's looking really cool, and also very patient and very calm. Like, I feel like Hades really nailed the character of, well, Hades, design-wise and, like, personality-wise, because he's always so calm, he's always not laid back, but takes his job serious, but not in the way that he's super strict. He's actually very lenient. Like, a lot of the heroes that ended up in the underworld, they either have a good life or even found a new job. Like, Orpheus got a place right next to him to sing, which is a huge honor. Stuff like that. Like, I feel like there's a lot of things in Hades that are really cool and a really nice depiction. How it portray him in all media, yeah. I have to admit though, I kinda like the Disney version. Not because I think that's really true to the original, just because it's funny. Like, I like the depiction because it's a bit light-hearted, right? It is not... I didn't know that it's not meant to be the exact story and not an exact portrayal of the original one. Also, I think the design is kind of cool. Like, the design of him with the flame hair and the blue, that kind of looks nice. But you know that it's not supposed to be an accurate depiction. So, as a, let's say, more light-hearted, funny version of Hades, I kind of like the Disney version. Not like the other gods. Can be greedy, cruel, full of themselves, yeah. A lot of the gods are really unfair and behave like you would expect of the gods. Maybe not Hermes. I feel like Hermes is also an exception. Because most of the time, when I hear any stories of Hermes, he's very nice to the humans. But maybe because he's also a bit closer to the humans. As, you know, as the messenger and all. Like, I feel like because he is also the god of the thieves, the god of the travelers, like, I feel like he has a better connection to humans as his role. So Hermes also often feels like a bit of an exception, like a cool, nice guy. I feel like often when I hear stories of him, Hermes just gives out his stuff for free. Like, he's giving Perseus the shoes. I think he's giving... Isn't that his staff that he gives to someone too? Like, Hermes seems like a nice character too. He's the most grounded. That is a very... I feel like that's a very literal thing, considering that he's like literally positioned under the earth. Very tolerating. Under Hestia. I don't know enough about Hestia, to be honest. Hestia is also one of those gods that I only know the name about. I still have so many gods to look into and so much to learn. Also want to learn more about Hephaestus. Hephaestus has a really interesting story from what I feared. Because I've once watched a video about Hephaestus and it sounds really unique. Because unlike most gods, he's not, he's not good looking, he's not the most out there character, but still really important. And has his role. Like, Hephaestus feels like a very cool god to learn about.
Same way Tolkien tweaked Homer's formula, Jackson tweaked Tolkien's. Instead of keeping Frodo as a bystander, watching the Deus Ex Machina as Gollum trips into Mount Doom, movie Frodo wrestles with Gollum as they both fall over the edge. Heightening both Frodo's agency and failure in destroying the ring makes his ending sailing into the West all the more bittersweet. And even though the Shire has been saved,
but not for me.
But the same can't be said of movie Odysseus, where Homer's version saves and then rules Ithaca. Nolan wanted to leave the audience on a bittersweet note of his own, saying, quote, "For me, it was important in looking at the ending to try and strike the right balance between pessimism and optimism. But for Odysseus, this bittersweet ending is mostly just sweet. Despite his war guilt, he departs with the love of his life toward a dream they always longed for but thought was impossible. The best stories are built on stolen parts. So the real problem with Nolan's ending isn't Odysseus sailing into the West like Frodo, it's that Nolan didn't steal enough. He took the boat, but left its meaning." If you're interested
That's just a funny thing to say. He didn't steal enough. I feel like this describes the new Odyssey very well. He didn't steal enough from the original. Sister of Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, goddess of half, home, That's basically the only thing I know about. Like, I know her domain and her, position in the family. I just don't know any stories of her and what she did. Actually, I didn't remember that she was the sister of Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon. They have way too many siblings, but I remember, like, I know that her domain was half home and, domestic life, just not in which way she ever interacted with other gods or humans. I think I've never heard a story of her. Granted, I think she's also one of the ones that doesn't have that much. Like, I don't think she's mentioned that often. Or at least doesn't have those, big famous stories that you would have heard of. I think you have to dig a bit deeper to find stuff about her.
How Tolkien's writing compares to other epic fantasies, click here. And if you enjoyed this video, it'd mean a lot if you shared it with someone you know.
I originally wanted to watch this. The Narnia thing. But just because I was talking so much about Elden Ring. By the way, this guy I really like his videos, so I would recommend that. I've watched a bunch of those, as you can see, and I really enjoy that. Especially because they're short. Man, it's so hard to find shorter videos on a specific topic that not go on like a 20-minute tangent about everything about it. Unlike me, I like to go on 30-minute tangents. I mean, we've basically talked an hour about Greek gods, even though this was supposed to be a stream about Tolkien. She still loves humans, and if she doesn't like you, then you're a serious jerk, really big jerk. That sounds like a really nice goddess for once. That sadly doesn't happen often. But I also wanted to watch these now. Just because I talked so much about
The
Elden
influences
Ring.
behind Elden Ring are a complex...
Can I pause? Because I think I watched this earlier today. And I really like this comparison. Because I love Elden Ring. And I've been learning about Tolkien. And this is a really good combination. Tend to do that, yeah. Sometimes the problems do. If you want to talk about something specific, and then you go on a tangent about like 50 other things. Granted, the Odyssey just makes you do that. Because there's so much to complain about it. So let's talk about something way nicer.
Web of mythology, religion, and art. But sometimes glimmers of clarity emerge through the fog. When asked about Elden Ring's literary inspiration, the first thing Hidetaka Miyazaki cites is The Lord of the Rings, which makes sense. Playing the game for 5 minutes confronts us with a lot that's certainly tempting to connect to Tolkien's.
That is something I did not know, by the way. As I said, I've never watched Lord of the Rings, and I've obviously didn't read the books, so I did not know about this. Like, obviously I knew about Sauron on creating the rings. I did not know that it's depicted like that, though. So I did not know that Radagon, well, in this scene he's destroying the ring, and I think it's America in this scene in particular, but you know what I mean. But I didn't realize that this is basically the same scene.
World. Elden Ring takes place in a region called the Lands Between, a term with the same meaning as Tolkien's Middle-earth. Similarly, the Erd Tree, the focus of the game's mythology, resembles the 2 trees depicted in Tolkien's own book of mythology. While these aspects of Elden Ring seemingly point to Tolkien, their linguistic—
Wait, I don't know about the 2 trees in Tolkien's story. But I feel like saying that the Erd Tree...
Similarly, the Erd Tree, the focus of the game's...
I would not say that the Erd Tree alone is equivalent to those 2 trees. Because that only makes sense of the DLC and the Shadow Tree. Because the Shadow Tree is also kind of bending around it, like... So... I would say the Erd Tree alone does not do that. Also, there's way more to the Erd Tree, like... And the game is kind of vague about it. Wasn't there, like, originally already something? I think it's called the Crucible, which shape and form is not specified. I think there was also theories of the Erd Tree just having grown on top of an already existing tree. So I feel like the Erd Tree is a bit more complex than just saying it's equivalent to, you know, Yggdrasil in Northern mythology that is said to be an inspiration for Tolkien, which apparently was not true because he apparently used the Alexander story as inspiration. But you know what I mean? I feel like it's a bit complexer than that, and it's not as simple as just saying, oh yeah, it's equivalent to these trees.
Mythology resembles the 2 trees depicted in...
But I can't say it because I don't know what those 3 mean in Lord of the Rings, so... Or in Middle-earth. Like, I literally can't say what their meaning is, so I can't compare it. But the Erd Tree had a very literal meaning too, right?
Tolkien's own book of mythology. While these aspects of Elden Ring seemingly point to Tolkien, their linguistic and botanical roots stretch much further than the 20th century. Because as much as Tolkien singularly forged the fantasy genre as we know it, he was also
I'm always so impressed by that. Like, the things Tolkien did for fantasy and... but I guess also dragons is just insane. Like, so many things would not exist if not for this one man and a bunch of children book authors. It's crazy. If you... As I said it earlier in this stream, but imagine this, without this man and a bunch of children book authors, we would not have dragons today. That's so crazy. Because dragons are everywhere. In almost every fantasy game. In almost every fantasy story. Frick, even outside fantasy stories you have dragons. There are people that are so into dragons that they... I'm not gonna go into that. But, you know what I mean? Like, it's so insane to think that without one person or like a small group of people, that just wouldn't exist anymore. They would have just died out a long time ago. The Perrin and Lowen are 2 trees of Valinor, 1 silver and 1 gold, that brought light to the world before the creation of the sun and the moon. That sounds really cool, but then I would not compare that to the Erd Tree. The whole of Dragons goes way to the... I know, I made a video on it. And that video only scratches the surface. Because I only had like half an hour, or less than half an hour to get everything into that. So I had to cut out a lot of things. But it goes insanely deep. From how it started and how simple dragons were. Because originally dragons were only, like me, a snake. and then turned into like they evolved basically. Dragons are like Pokemon, right? They started out as one small thing, and then just with every evolution got bigger and bigger and bigger. They got smarter over time, and then there was like Christianity kind of trying to ban them because they put dragons on the same level as the devil, and then no one wanted to write about it anymore because everyone was like, oh shit, I don't want to write about dragons because then I have to deal with the church, and I don't want to deal with the church, so dragons don't exist anymore. And then there was Tolkien who was like, I don't give a damn about it, even though he was apparently a very religious Christian, and he just wrote about dragons in the story because that, you know, they were part of what he loved. So it's so insanely deep, and there's so much about it, and then there's so many different kinds of dragons that all were created in different ages and for different reasons. And then the topic of modern dragons is especially interesting because they have so many different shapes and forms now. Like, modern dragons are insane. It's so deep, and I love the topic. It's one of the reasons why I am a dragon. On the region, everything changes. Examples. Movies is technically. I don't even know in movies, and I'm already fascinated. There's also the very fascinating thing that for some mythical reason, the Eastern world and the Western world came up with the same idea of dragons, just in different ways, but yet they look insanely similar. Like, how? They were created independently. I don't know nearly enough about Eastern dragons, though. That's one of the things I still need to look into, but it's crazy. Like, I just can't imagine. Like, they look so similar, even though their nature is like polar opposites from what I feel. I think in Eastern mythology, dragons were mostly regarded as gods and benefactors, even though they were also evil ones. While in Western mythology, dragons were like pure evil, and like everything that was bad in the world. So they had like polar opposites when it comes to their meaning, but design-wise, they were both so similar. Just giant snake-like shaped beings with arms or not, being able to fly or not, because no one really agreed on anything. Oh, it's so crazy. And I just love it. It's just so good. And then all those misconceptions that are kinda true, but also not true, like, from some Korean. It is a being that failed to ascend to being a dragon and resemble more serpent than a snake, but it's very powerful. So it's basically the man serpents from Elden Ring. That's great. It sounds like the story of... I don't remember where it's from. Was it a Japanese story of a carp that if it manages to jump over a mountain, it will turn into a dragon? Sounds kind of similar. And it's also a really cool idea that, you know, a carp just turns into a dragon because it did something impossible. Or was it a carp? It was some fish.
Participating in a tradition older than himself. According to Tolkien, Middle-earth is a reference to Midgard from Norse mythology.
I thought that conceivably Midgard might be Middle-earth or have some connection.
Oh yes, they're the same word. Simply an old-fashioned word for this world we live in, as imagined surrounded by the ocean.
That description is like one-to-one what the lands between are, which is really cool. I also... Every time I look at the map of the lands between, it's so sick because you have so many different areas that fit Norse mythology perfectly. Like, if you want to break it down to like the most basics, you have like the Mount Gelmir area, which is probably very similar, or it's kind of similar to what is described as the land of the dwarves, which was, I think, Svartalheim. So, like, it gives off similar, like, it has a lot of caves, it is very mountainy, it is basically perfect area for a forge, like, it has all that. Then you have, like, the giants, the mountaintop of the giants, which, you know, the highest mountain in Northern mythology is the in the realm of the giants and all that. Also, the giants were killed, which is also very similar. Was it Nidavellir? I always forget which one was which. But either way, you know what I mean. Like you could kinda assign the different realms of Northern mythology to the different areas. But Land of the Dark Elves, which I've learned is sometimes the same as the dwarves, depending on which interpretation you want to follow. But I just liked it. Like, it has those similarities, and it can basically assign some of the realms to this map, and it's really cool. It's complicated. Yeah, like, everything is complicated because there's no right or wrong. There's just 5,000 different versions of everything. That's the problem. But it's also the cool part, because I hate it when people are like, this is not right, when in fact it is right, but also not quite. Because in mythology, it's rarely just yes or no. It's more like, kinda? Because we don't know exactly what's the truth, and the truth is that there is no perfect truth. There's always like, in this version it's like that, but then there's this other version that is a bit different, and you can't even say that the older version is correct because they were created independently in different areas. So doesn't help that most of it was recorded only by voice. It also doesn't help that most of Northern mythology is lost because of Christianity, and that burned basically everything other than the prose Edda and the poetic Edda, if I remember right, and maybe some minor stuff. So that also doesn't help. We have lost a lot about the old Northern religion. I sometimes wonder how much we still know about Germanic religion, because it was very similar and related, which makes sense, like they're basically neighbors anyway. So I sometimes wonder about that, because in Germanic mythology, for example, there was Thunder, the god of thunder, which is from his description basically the same as Thor. And also, if it wasn't obvious, the name that turned into the word thunder at the Germanic Celt. So there's a lot of overlap, and I actually don't know how much was preserved of that. And there's also stuff like, you know, Siegfried, who is basically, or not in basically, like he's the same person as Sigurd according to classification nowadays. Like, he's classified as a different version of Sigurd, but he's Germanic while Sigurd is Norse. So it's so complicated. It's also one thing I like about mythology. Mythology doesn't care about borders, especially because borders didn't exist back in the days. But like, mythology doesn't care about borders. You can have a story in two different mythologies that is the same story, slightly different, and no one gave a damn about it, because people did not talk about like, oh, you're stealing my culture. No, they were like, oh, cool, my culture is spreading, I like that. Like, for some reason, culture back in the days was the opposite of what it is today. Nowadays, people are complaining the moment you take even the tiniest reference from their culture. Back in the days, people were happy that their culture is spreading. Converse into Celtic mythology different from Norse mythology, even though close, especially Germanic Celts, probably because still a practitioner. That sounds very interesting. But I feel like I'm digressing again. It's impossible to stay on topic, but it's also very easy to digress when you're trying to talk or learn about something that you don't know much about.
Mythology also gives us a primordial tree.
You speak of the two trees of Valinor.
Oh,
Are these in
them.
any way reflections in your world of the great world tree, the Norse world tree?
No, they're none like it. They're much more like the trees of the sun and the moon. It was covered in the Far East
Sorry,
in
that's
the
real,
Great
that's true.
Alexander stories.
Tolkien rejecting the influence of Norse tradition on his trees only to connect them to trees from a different tradition highlights how prominent of a symbol they are across ancient mythologies. Not to mention their importance in relatively younger
I hope you didn't hear that.
mythologies, like the World Tree in Berserk, one of Miyazaki's favorite manga, which also happens to be set.
Oh, by the way, this is basically the Earth Tree. Like, every time I hear anything about Berserk, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I guess Elving took it from there. Because I feel like this is basically how the Earth Tree and the Shadow Tree behave, right? If I remember right, the Shadow Tree was kind of, you know, growing around the Earth Tree in a weird fashion. So, every time I see this, I'm like, oh yeah, this idea was taken from Berserk. Like, basically everything else.
Like the World Tree in Berserk, one of Miyazaki's favorite manga, which also happens to be set within Midland.
That is so cool. Like, every time I see this opening cutscene, Elden Ring's opening cutscene is probably my favorite among all Souls games. It's so epic. And it has some of the... Like, man, whoever voiced the opening cutscene in Elden Ring, what an amazing job. Like, this man really felt what he was saying there. There was so much emotion in there. And it's, every time I hear it, it's just so good. It's probably the opening cutscene that I've listened the most to from all Souls game that I never skip because it's so good. I only skipped like the end part when you know you have your own character there, because I feel like at that point it's over and I don't need to see my character because I couldn't care less. But all the other stuff is so good, and this, like, the animation and the cinematics are also so good. Like, look at her. Malenia is so good looking.
Another scion of Midgard. All of this only further obscures Tolkien's influence on Elden Ring. Yet their shared DNA
Wait, I just realized, holy shit, Berserk has Italy? I didn't know that there's Italy in Berserk. I don't think I've ever seen this map. Wait a second. Scandinavia looks a bit different. Like, there's basically... Sweden is missing here, I think. But there's Denmark. There's Germany. Actually, oh, it's kind of... I think... This... Germany... I'm really bad at geography, okay? But here's Germany. I think Switzerland would be here. The mountains are also further to the south. I think the Alps are more like here. I think. I don't think they're that far down. Or something here is... Maybe it's differently shaped. Germany is actually a bit bigger. For some reason, France and the British Islands fused in this world, but that's okay. I think those are also mostly the same shape. I feel like there's a part missing here that would be fun. I can't say for sure though, I'm bad at geography. But we have Spain and Portugal down here. I assume Andorra would be somewhere here. No wait, Andorra is here, I think. Something like that. Like somewhere in those mountains, I assume. Also, I guess a huge part of Russia is missing. That would be here. I think we already have like the lower parts of Russia, something like that. But this is really similar to the actual world map. Just some adjustments and some parts of land are missing and some parts are fused. It's very interesting. And there's this cursed symbol, which I don't know why that's here. It's also kind of interesting that there's apparently one castle here, nowhere else. But really interesting map. Oh wait, there's also castles here. Does that mean that Berserk is canonically playing in Europe? Which makes sense. Everything medieval is playing in Europe because medieval is a European time. Like, duh. You can't have medieval ever anywhere else because medieval is literally Central Europe. And maybe like Northern Africa. And, you know, the Near East, but only slightly.
Obscures Tolkien's influence on Elden Ring. Yet their shared DNA does exist, according to Miyazaki, who, like Tolkien, is very meticulous about what he says. So to find the explicit...
Oh my god. I knew of the eye, and for some reason I never connected
Miyazaki,
that
who,
to those frenzy flame things. I've never seen an eye in that. But now I see it. Oh, that's embarrassing. I never noticed that. But it makes sense. Oh god. But why? But why? Why would it be an eye? It's all about hands. Hands have no eyes. But Bloodborne has eyes. Grant us eyes.
Like Tolkien is very meticulous about what he says. So to find the explicit connections, we need to shift our attention away from the macrocosmic and instead zoom in
Yo, why did you have to show something from the DLC? Hey, you don't even show the Shadow Tree, but you have to show that scene?
into smaller details, specifically onto one of Tolkien's own favorite subjects, names.
Now that's a name I haven't heard for a while.
Elden Ring is littered with names that have possible connection to Tolkien's mythos. As Reddit user Mershroom pointed out, Mount Gelmir has much in common with Tolkien's Gelmir. The game's Fort Faroth similarly evokes
cool.
Tolkien's Tauren Foroth. But no shared term cuts deeper into their respective mythologies than Elden Ring's Numen and Tolkien's Numenorians. The Numenorians are special humans known for having a, quote, great span of years, many times that of the men of Middle-earth,
You cannot be 80.
87.
but whose numbers increased only slowly. Their children
For some reason, it reminds me of The Witcher. Just that Geralt is, I think, at this moment, because it changed at some point, but I think currently Geralt is like 66 or so. Because Witcher's become way old. I think Vesemir is like 200 or so. And it kind of reminds me of that. That's seeing her reaction, like, yeah, I've seen this before.
were few. This perfectly maps onto the Numen in Elden Ring, who are, quote, long-lived but seldom born. Both races are also known for their height. The Numenorians were, quote, taller than the tallest of the sons of Middle-earth, with Elendil, Aragorn's ancestor, reportedly having been 7'11", towering over other men the way the Numen tower over other classes. Similarly, the Numen
It's just a minor thing. But saying they tower over other classes is kind of wrong. Because I'm 99.9% sure, no matter which origin I think it was, you take... Also, Numen is not a class. Classes are like, you know, what they called vagabond, prisoner, and all that. Was it beggar in Elden Ring? They have a different name for the naked one every time, so I confuse them sometimes. But anyway, like, I'm pretty sure that A, all classes have the same size because their armor is different, and B, I'm pretty sure every origin is the same size. There's literally no difference in character size. I think maybe type A and type B, like male and female, have like millimeter different, but I don't think that matters. So they're all the same height. If in this case, it would be more accurate to say Numen and the other races or other people, because classes is kind of wrong, and it's wrong in general because Numens are not classes. But it's just a minor thing. I want to let that slide. I'm just a huge fan of Elden Ring, so I have to correct that.
are said to have come from outside the lands between, just as the Numenorians come from an island separated from Middle-earth by a vast...
I'm not sure if the DLC ever clarified that, but Marika came from the land, not from the Shadow Realm. But did the game or the DLC ever clarify that the Numen in general come from the Shadow Realm, or was it just her particular tribe, her particular family or village that came from the Shadow Realm? I'm not sure if the game ever clarified that. Because the only thing it says is that the Numen are from a different land than the lands between. But we also know that a place that's called the Badlands exists, which is where Godfrey was, well, originally from and then banished to again. Which is probably also the place where you come from as the Tarnished, because the Tarnished were Godfrey's man that was, and I assume also women, that were banished with him, so I assume when you come back to the lands between, you come from the Badlands. but it's also just a theory. Okay, sorry. But I'm just wondering if anything in the DLC ever clarifies or even mentions the Numen again. Because I honestly don't remember if the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree mentions anything about the Numen. It feels like they just dropped that. But then again, I don't remember most of the lore that I watched about the Shadow of the Erdtree. Which would be a good reason to go back and watch everything about it.
The Numenorians were so magnificent that the humans of Middle-earth, quote, called them gods. This relationship to godhood is particularly relevant to Elden Ring, since the Numen are, quote, of the same stock as Queen Marika herself. Marika being the missing god in Elden Ring. Like Marika, many of the Numenorians sought to become gods. Despite their relatively long lives, the Numenorians wanted to be...
I think this is an interesting topic, because you could argue that Marika being a Numen has nothing to do with her becoming a goddess. Because as we learn in the DLC, that the Numen were not supposed to ever get anywhere close to godhood. And it was the Omen that were supposed to do that. So, and apparently also did in the past, question mark? I feel like we don't get any info about that. But I feel like the only thing you can say is that the current goddess is a Numen. I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that that's the same as in Lord of the Rings. Or in Middle-earth. Granted, I don't know how it is in Middle-earth, so... But if it's literally said and they are the same as gods, where was it? It was here, right?
of Middle-earth, quote, called them God.
Yeah. So... I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that. It's not entirely wrong, because Marika is the goddess of the land between. But she's only the current one, and there was probably a previous one. Just like there's theories about like Placidusax being a previous Elden Lord and stuff like that. So it's not like the Numen in general in Elden Ring are considered gods before Marika. It's more like Marika as a Numen specifically is called a god. I think you can still say that it was maybe inspired by Lord of the Rings and that story. I just feel like saying it's the same is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion.
This relationship,
because it's really just Marika in specific that is the goddess, and not anyone else among the Numen that we know of, at least.
Godhood is particularly relevant to Elden Ring, since the Numen are, quote, of the same stock as Queen Marika herself. Marika being the missing god in Elden Ring. Like Marika, many of the Numenorians sought to become gods. Despite their relatively long lives, the Numenorians wanted to be, quote, released from death. But for all this, death did not depart from the land. Marika also feared death, but unlike the Numenorians, she had the power to do something about it, sealing away destined death and becoming known across the lands between.
It's questionable if she was able to do anything about it, because I'm pretty sure it is... Well, not pretty sure, but there's so many hints to Marika was not able to banish death for good. Because even without anything, we know that parts of it could be stolen, right? Like, it was not like death was completely removed. It was just suppressed, rather, right? And stealing it was definitely possible. It happened. And then there's the death... What were they called? Death Foods, I think? It was just Death Foods, right? And they happened independently from... And before death was actually fully released. So... I feel like she was not able to completely get rid of it. So more like just seal it away for a time. Which also caused more problems than not. And I think you can also say that the reason why she wanted, you know, to remove death is because death was literally the one connection between the land between and the Shadow Realm, and she wanted to cut off every single connection to it. Which she managed to do, as we found out. So I wouldn't really say she feared death. I think she feared the Shadow Realm. Which is also why she sent her son there to burn everything down. And Mesmer is one of the coolest characters of all time, just saying. And I already thought that before he turned into a giant white snake. Turning into a giant white snake was just, you know, it was the cherry on top for me. So, I really like snakes, if it's not obvious. I mean, to be fair, I also... It's not... Wait, what was my... Shit. I just wanted to show off my tail. I hope I can find the moment again. But I wanted to say, that's why I also have a, you know, huge influence by white snake-like dragons in me. Snakes are so beautiful and cute. I really love snakes. Like, I would not ever touch a snake or want to get close to one because I still respect them as dangerous animals. But I would say over the years, snakes have become one of my favorite animals because they are so fascinating and interesting. I in particular like white snakes with red eyes. Not necessarily albino ones, but you know what I mean. Like, more like the fantasy kind of snake with white scales that typically have red eyes. Which might be obvious. Oh, wait, that's all I wanted to show. Let's find the moment. I think it won't here. I just wanted to just make that clear that I really are a huge fan of snakes, and that Mesmer turned into a giant white snake, that was just the... That was the cherry on top that made me really love this character. I was almost sad that he was fought so early and had more of a minor role in the whole story, but he's still such a cool character. I also love his voice lines. Like, Mesmer is such an amazing and cool character, and I love the fight. The fight is so good. Challenging, but so good. Mesmer is so cool. And I honestly wish there was more about the Abyssal Serpent, because you can find, like, the skin of a white snake really close to a burnt down village and stuff, and right next to a statue of America and stuff like that. Like, there's so many hints that they just don't elaborate on. There's no info about where does the Abyssal Serpent come from, what does it do, what does it mean. The only thing you know is that it's a bad omen and will cause destruction, so it had to be sealed away. But other than that, there's so little information about it, but it's so cool.
Gods. Despite their relatively long lives, the Númenóreans wanted to be, quote, released from death. But for all this, death did not depart from the land.
By the way, this art is really cool. I haven't looked at that when I first watched the video, but this looks insanely cool. I didn't, until now, and this is like the third or fourth time that I see this one because I, you know, messed up right now. I have not noticed the person here. That is such a subtle thing. Because I was just looking at the guy. But this is super subtle and looks so good. I honestly think that paintings like that are so underestimated. There's so many cool things in paintings like that. And it's a shame that people don't do those anymore.
America also feared death.
Oh,
but
well,
like
this is obviously a not too old one. I mean, like, that they're not often done anymore. With, you know, those hidden details and stuff. Like, that is so underestimated. And I say that, there's probably more than enough people who do that. I just don't know any. But I wish I would see that more often, let's put it like that.
Númenóreans, she had the power to do something about it, sealing away destined death and becoming known across the lands between as America the Eternal. But despite her best efforts, death returned, claiming the life of her beloved son, Godwyn. And like the Númenóreans' dissatisfaction with the limits of their power...
Also, I think in this context, it's kinda important to mention. I mean, the people who, you know, kill Godwyn, at least his soul, if I remember. Wait, yeah, his soul. Those are also Numen. Like, the Black Knife assassins are all Numen, and they are all women. So I feel like in this context, it's maybe important to mention that.
With the limits of their power, America became
This is so disgusting.
dissatisfied with the limits of her godhood.
I've seen
It
this
was
scene
clearly
so many
inspired
times,
by
every
Tolkien
time
as
I'm
the
like,
Newman
"Ugh."
seemed to be. With Elden Ring, there's always another layer of possible interpretation. Because Newman is also a
By the way, that's what I love about it. That's what I love about the Souls series in general. There is rarely a straight answer to something. Like, may it be the endings, may it be some important lore things, there's always this, like, enough room for interpretation that you can have your own opinion on something, but also enough clarifying information to give you, like, a red, what is called, like a, not red line, like a, oh, you know what I mean, I'm dumb, I am tired, don't know what I'm saying, but you know, there's always enough to give you a lead, so that everyone is like on a same basis, but enough on little enough, I guess, to give you room for your own interpretation. And that's so good. It makes talking about Elden Ring or Souls lore so much more interesting, because you have this room for disagreement. You can disagree with someone on everything that goes beyond the hard, cold fact that is presented to you. And I love that. It makes just talking and thinking about its lore so much more interesting.
Latin term for divinity, divine presence, or will. Further distancing from Tolkien, Newman isn't even their name in the game's original Japanese script, where instead they're called Marabito, spiritual or divine beings in Japanese folklore. As tempting as it might be to conclude that Newman was just an isolated choice by the game's localization team, this is unlikely, given that Miyazaki is a self-professed naming nerd, saying, quote, "I enjoy the whole process. Things like word origins, how it sounds in expressions, regional
I love the turtle. You have to respect the Pope turtle.
variations, the whole thing. This might remind you of someone.
Languages have a flavor to me. I never understand people saying, for instance, it was awfully dry and dull, because a new language to me is just like taking a new wine or a new sweet beet or something.
I really love that about Tolkien. I feel the exact same. I would love to learn more languages, because languages are so fascinating. If I had more time in my life and more, well, not patience, I feel like I have the patience, but if I had more time and more energy in my life, I would love to learn at least 1 or 2 more languages, because languages are so fascinating. But maybe it's easy to say for me. I mean, I literally studied linguistics, so I really love language. It's so fascinating what it can do. And it's so often overlooked, but language and communication is such an essential part for our life, and yet we take it for granted. But it has so much depth, it has so much, like, it's a system that exists without strict rules. Like, everything we know about grammar, so that's not something that was invented, it's something that it's a conclusion out of how we handle it. But language in itself basically created itself. It's like this connection, this invisible connection between humans that just somehow works. Like, somehow we all speak the same inherently and can communicate inherently. It is so amazing and fascinating. Yeah, I started learning Spanish and stuff. We're just gonna start over. I feel that. I learned Italian in school, but I forgot almost everything about it. And sometimes I'm really tempted to just, relearn it. Because some things I still know, but it's mostly vocabulary that I don't remember. And maybe also half of the grammar, but languages are so fascinating. And just that we have the inherent ability to understand and speak a language just from our environment, that is so crazy. I can't believe how people can just take that for granted and never take a minute to think about it. Like, so many things would just not exist if not for our inherent ability of communication. And it's so so insanely incredible.
Even though Miyazaki isn't verbally fluent in English, according to Elden Ring's lead translator,
he used to read Lord of the Rings in English and other fantasy in English because before it was available in Japanese.
Numenor appears 52 times in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, meaning that Miyazaki has at least come across the term before. But while Miyazaki's connection to Tolkien is still...
At least speak French and English. Trying to learn Spanish. That maybe Tagalog or Mongolian, just because you love them. That sounds like a really hard task. No, wait. Shit. I don't even remember. Was Tagalog a hard one? I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, by the way. I have no idea about the Mongolian, but especially, let's say, the Eastern languages, they're usually a bit harder to learn. Although, just some time ago, I actually learned that... What was it? For Japanese, people learning German is apparently easier than English. Because there's a... I don't know why, but YouTube keeps recommending videos from this... I assume it's a Japanese guy that probably also studied both languages. And they're not bad. Like, they're a bit dry and, you know, more facts than storytelling or whatever. But they're quite interesting of how languages that seem so different are actually more similar than you might think sometimes. Regional versions of the same language can sound very different. Which that's fascinating. Oh yeah, dialects are insanely crazy. Dialects are like the cherry on top for languages. Like you have different languages, and then among languages you have like this cherry on top that is just the different dialects. And some of them are very exotic and only... Like, it's crazy to think about it, but sometimes there's the dialect that's only, like, spoken in one singular village because it's died out everywhere else, and that's so crazy to think like that. Like, to think that there's basically villages out there that have, like, a slightly changed version of a very common language that only exists there and nowhere else. It's so fascinating. Tagalog is not that bad. We gave it a shot last year. Wanted to focus on one at a time. Yeah, that's probably better. Because it's already kind of hard to learn a language. Like, if you want to be fluent in a language, you basically have to participate in the culture and actively speak that language for many, many years. So it's kind of hard to do that with multiple, because then we would have to participate in multiple cultures, multiple, you know, languages, and that's just, at some point, it's just overwhelming. Whereas it means the same thing, but don't exist in other regions. Yeah, I had a really fascinating field study that was talked about when I was in university. And it was... I wish I could tell you who did it, but I just, for the life of me, can't remember their name. But it was basically a group of researchers traveled around, and it's really impressive that they still did that by foot, because the internet wasn't a thing back then. They traveled around the Alps and asked every village, every city, like every place, what their word for butter is. Because there's like this huge thing about the difference between a concept and... What was the other one? Like, what's the difference between concept and the word? I don't remember what the other part was. My studies have... It's been a few years since my studies. And the research showed that there's like over 100 different words for butter in just the Alp region. Like, just around the Alps, there's over 100 words for butter. That is insane. And a lot of those are only spoken in like one place. Like, it's only used in one region. And not in region, like in one singular village, some of them. Just to think about that. So in France, we close the door, we say... I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, but I don't know if they can say... That's interesting. I was trying to think of an example that I might know from German, but I can't think of one. Mainly because I'm not very well versed in the different dialects. I mean, I don't even speak my own dialect, so can't even say that. But it's really fascinating. Languages are super interesting, and I sometimes can't understand how people cannot relate, because I feel like that it's such a fundamental thing that you can't avoid language in your life. So it's just super fascinating. Seeing those Vincent Origins, I feel that. I really feel that. That is very relatable.
Plausibly hazy. The same can't be said of Elden Ring's co-writer, George R.R. Martin, who has called Tolkien the, quote, most influential writer in my life. Martin, creating the game's underlying mythology, recontextualizes every ambiguously Tolkien-inspired term in Elden Ring, increasing the likelihood of Tolkien's shadow looming behind phrases like the lands between, which we know for a fact Martin himself coined.
Modern fantasy largely grew out of the work of J.R.R. Tolkien, which looms over all fantasy like a mountain, and everybody else is operating in the shadow of Tolkien and what he did.
That is such, like, saying it like that, it just emphasizes on how genius Tolkien was. That still, there is no one who could reach the same heights as this man. Because everything we do, everything we think of fantasy comes from this man. At least everything modern. And it's so crazy. Like, the only way you could ever try to compete with him is to actively try to avoid him and only work on the things that, or with the things that inspired him. Otherwise, I can't imagine how he would ever manage to top or even be on par with this man. Because he's just that much of an influence. And it's crazy. It is fascinating to think. And it makes me regret never having watched Lord of the Rings, and reinforces my idea of I really want to watch those movies. And maybe if I ever have time, read the books, but that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Very not just in learning a subject, particularly the action of learning in general. A lot of random facts, niche subjects. I feel that. I feel that. I also like to be just a sponge and absorb every knowledge that I can, even though I don't need it. I think watching stream when it's legal. There's this little problem of it not being legal to stream movies. The only thing I could do is, you know, have a blank screen and you get my reactions while watching. So it would be more of a watch along, but I'm pretty sure it's not legal. Maybe 70 years after... Oh no, wait, shit. I was like, maybe when it becomes public domain, but then I realized, no, wait. The rights are with a company, right? I don't remember who or which company was behind Lord of the Rings, but the company probably has the rights on it, so it's probably never gonna be legal or free domain. It's not like Steamboat Willie, who's public domain. We could watch the original Steamboat Willie. This got a legal streaming night, let's go. For legal reasons, I would never do that. Also, it would mean that I have to own the movie first so that I can watch it, and I do not own the movie. So, first I have to get the movie, and then... I mean, I could... I think I'll Discord watch along with people. Boring. If the movies weren't that long, I would try a watch along. And just, you know, have a blank screen and maybe have like a timer on screen that shows where we are, like at what minute and second roughly we are in the movie. But the movies are so long that that's probably not gonna happen. It's just, the movies are too long for that.
Some Tolkien purists overstate the game's debt to the Lord of the Rings, not realizing that Tolkien himself borrowed terms from the mythologies.
This is also insanely cool art. Like, there's so much you can see in that. Like, I'm honest, I can't even tell what those two are. But you clearly have Fenrir. This must be Odin, because... Shit, what was this horse called? The 8-legged horse? I don't remember, but... This is really cool. And then you have Midgard Somner or Jormungand. I like Jormungand more because it's easier to say. and 4. Like, this is a really beautiful artwork. And I assume the ones in the background are probably the Valkyries. At least that's the only thing I can think of figures with wings that would have something to do with Ragnarok. If anything, Fenrir is maybe a bit small, but with the chain. Actually, no, that has to be Fenrir with the change and fighting Odin. That's like literally what happens in Ragnarok. But this is really cool artwork. This is like, it's all the little things. Like, there's so much happening at the same time here, and yet it's really like, you just look at it and I feel like, oh, I see all those things, and then you look closer and you see all those little details, like those people in the background fighting. I was thinking, does Midgard summoner come out of the rock here? But anyway, like, this level 4 and the light right behind him, you know, like a lightning. Like, there's so much little details in this. It's such a beautiful artwork.
I've been interested that many of the names are very close to Norse legend names. For example, Gimli is the name of the Hall of Gold.
That's another point, yeah. But there's a whole list of rather attractive dwarf names.
But if by hobby, knowing a language, religion, and beliefs work kind of comes in the bundle. The other's beautiful, the other word beautiful. But yeah, religion, beliefs. I mean, religion and beliefs are more or less the same, but it's all connected in a way. Like, a lot of words that we use come from religion or from beliefs, and even if they don't have the same meaning anymore, like, you know, their origins and something like that, everything is connected in a way, and it's just nice. I'm almost sad that nowadays, and in a lot of, say, stories and modern stories, names are so neglectable. Like, when you look at old names, they have a meaning, right? Like, I'm sometimes sad that my birth name, like my legal name has no meaning. Like, it's not like, let's say, Leonard, right? Which comes from Lionheart, which just means someone is brave, like something like that. Like, my name doesn't have that. I think the only thing my name is known for is, without doxing myself, just gonna say a saint that had the same name. Not even a saint, I think it was a bishop, if I remember right. But that's it. Like, there's not even a huge famous figure who had the same name. I do not hate my name, even though it might sound like that. I'm just sometimes sad at a not deeper meaning to it. Or maybe there is and I haven't found it yet. There's also another famous person that has the same name, but I'm not gonna name them, because A, it would dox myself, and B, I think that would make it too obvious what my name is. So, gotta leave it at that it was one saint that I know of, or one bishop that I know of that had the same name, and that's literally the only reason, or the only thing to know about that name. But at least, especially in older stories, so many names have like a specific meaning. They're like taken from one word and just slightly changed, or even the opposite. A name became the synonym for something later on because they were such a important person, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's so sad that you look at modern stories, you look at a name and it just doesn't have a meaning. It's just, oh yeah, there's a name. And then you look at like old names, like Cinderella, for example. Cinderella is a perfect example for a name that is less of a name and more of a mockery, because her actual name is not Cinderella. Cinderella is what her stepsisters called her, because she was sleeping next to the oven because she had to sleep on the ground and was, you know, treated badly. So they called her Cinderella because of the cinders. You know, makes sense. I think there was something more to it why it was Cinderella, but you know what I mean? Like, the name comes from how they treated her and where she had to sleep, and it's more of a mockery than an actual name. So there was a meaning in that, and it's so rare nowadays to have that. Because I feel like a lot of modern stories should take any name. Granted, I think especially anime and Japanese stories, they often still do that just because of how the language works. But at least I feel in Western stories you just have names and they're not necessarily fitting or anything or meaning anything. They're just there, which is a bit sad. Because your legal name is a Celtic name, means young champion. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because you really have to be lucky to find it. Reverse searching it. Second name is more with say it also its meaning. Oh, I didn't think about it. I think one of my names has like a very deep meaning, but maybe yeah, one of my 3 names has a very obvious meaning, I guess. Let me think about the second way. I never checked on my third name, now that I think about it. That one might have a meaning, but I care so little about my second and third name that I never thought about it. Granted, I also don't care about my first name. I do not hate my name. I do like it. But I would change it. For maybe obvious reasons.
In one of the older headache poems, I'm afraid I simply begged them.
Elden Ring borrowing terms from existing mythologies and repurposing them in a way that both evokes and clouds their original use is exactly how Tolkien went about creating his own wildly original mythology. All of this leads to one conclusion. Elden Ring and The Lord of the Rings are the same. Not because the former is a ripoff of the latter, but because both weave complex webs of references into extremely...
Yo, I've never seen this before. This is really cool. That is really, really cool. Having Marika/Radagon with the... I never really know what it is. I assume it's like a spear to her. And instead of holding the Elden Ring, it's just the... My knowledge of Lord of the Ring lore is not enough, but I think it's just called the One Ring, right? I'm not sure if it has a name, but I just know it as the One Ring. But it is really cool artwork. That's just really nice. Very symbolic.
Works of art.
They also both have rings.
True. And
That's
that.
true. They both
If you're
have
interested in
rings.
diving into Tolkien
Can't deny
and
that.
Martin's complex relationship, click here. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more.
By the way, I really like the videos of this guy. I've been watching them on and off over the past month. Not month, like 2 or 3 weeks. I really enjoy them. Because they're really short. It's like 7-8 minutes usually. Sometimes, actually less. Sometimes a bit longer, but they're on the point. I feel like they're not talking about the whole... Like, they're really getting to the point. That's what I mean. So, really enjoy those. I also feel like they're funny sometimes. The comment about the wings, for example, and stuff. Really enjoyed watching those. I'm probably gonna watch more of that over the next weeks, days, whatever. I learn a bit more about Tolkien. But yeah, I've been enjoying this, so I really like the channel. Probably subscribe. I feel like I don't subscribe often enough because you don't wanna see the list of my subscriptions. It's a long list, okay? Very long list. Let's hide that. Anyway, I talked way longer than I thought. I thought this would be like a stream of like an hour and a half at max. Granted, if you only take the part where I actually talk about Tolkien and that, it's probably only an hour and a half. And then I spent like a half an hour complaining about the Odyssey again. Which is probably one of my favorite things to do. And then we also had a bit of a chat in between. Which is nice. I love that. I really do. We can never complain enough about the Odyssey though. That's a fact. Although some people still defend it for some weird reason. But that's also okay. If you want to defend the Odyssey, you have the right to. You're just not gonna convince me. But it was fun. I have no idea what I'm gonna do next week. I have to admit this was also like a very... Not last minute, because I was thinking about this for the past few days, honestly, but currently I still work on the concepts. For now, I'm just doing whatever is kind of mythology related in some way. But I think soonish there's gonna be more of a concept for the streams. Let me think. There's something I'm gonna start in September, I guess. Not sure if in the first week or the second week of September there's also gonna be a stream about that. And then it's gonna... Let's say there's a project in the work that I'm gonna do every other week, I think. So... Was it every other week? More or less every other week. But until then, I kinda have to find something to do and also find out something to do in between, which I hope I can figure out soonish to give, to give this a bit of direction, because currently it's really just all over the place and I just do something that I came up with on the spot or a few days earlier and I just try to make it work. So far it works, but I'm afraid that at some point it might not work out like that anymore, so working on getting a bit more structure into this. Tomorrow I'm gonna stream on Twitch. There's no structure for that, I'm just gonna do whatever I want, because the Twitch stream is where I chill and relax and do whatever I ever want to do. I think tomorrow I'm also gonna finish... Yeah, I'm probably gonna finish Dark Souls 1 tomorrow. And then we're gonna play a bit of New Game Plus, because I wanna get my achievement. And then we'll see what I'm gonna do for the rest of the stream. I actually don't really know what to do tomorrow. I'm right at the end, right before Gwyn. But there's also some more things I can do before we get to Gwyn. But it's also... Oh, now that I think about it, I did not grind anything. It's probably not important. I can probably do that in New Game Plus. Just... That's the plan. And then next week, I really hope that next week I can actually do this stream on Tuesday, because that's how it was originally planned. But... Well, last week it didn't work out. That was my fault though. And this week I just had a really, really stressful early week, so I just was too tired. I was like, if I start this stream on Tuesday, I have to end it really early, because, well, I couldn't go for this long, because I, well, would probably fall asleep, and B, kinda need sleep, because I had to work early, or wake up early the next day. But, so it just didn't really work out. But next week I hope it's a bit more chill, especially that my Tuesday is gonna be more chill, and then I can start on time, we can do something for a few hours and comfortably end it around this, well, probably a bit earlier, without having to stress about it too much. But that's it. I really enjoyed talking about 5 different things, I guess. But it's nice. I really enjoy those streams. I am actually kind of surprised. Like, I always, well, not always, I've known for the past years that I really just enjoy leaning back and just talking for a long time. But I've never really done dedicated just chatting streams before. Also never, watched things on stream and just reacted to them and talked about them. And I enjoy it more than I ever thought, honestly. And I really do that. I do enjoy that more. Always thought it's just not for me, but I apparently can talk for 3 hours without major breaks. I have to admit though, I'm sweating like crazy. It's I'm at the end of my energy, so gotta call it a day. It was fun. Thanks for being here with me as always. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, whatever time is for you, and I hope I see you again. Well, next week for YouTube, tomorrow for the others. Stream. Stay healthy, hydrated, do all the things that I usually don't do enough, especially sleep, man. I've not gotten enough sleep in the past week, and I should probably work on that. But have a wonderful one. I'm out, and, well, don't have anything to say other than take care of your wings. I feel like in context that's kind of correct, but it does sound weird, doesn't it? Oh well, I won't follow. Bye bye. Bye bye.